Good morning, everybody. Bhualan Fáisimór chuig Ghrogáin atá anseo inniu. You're all very, very welcome here to St. Patrick's Campus, DCU. I have no doubt we've lost a few people to DCU at this stage because I don't think it's quite clear yet in everybody's head that the two of them are all one campus, so I hope they'll join us shortly. Before I invite Enda Donlon to open our conference, there's two things which might be of interest to friends who have been unable to make it today for one reason or another, and you might like to tweet it out. The first thing is that there is a live stream available through the CESI website. And the second thing is that our good friends here, Michelle and Shane, who have been friends with us for the last number of conferences and who do a closed captioning service, that is also live for people who might want to read it. So the website for that is www.CESIWRITENOW, so basically crightnow.ie, and it's under public event. So somebody might like to tweet that out, and for those, as I said, of our friends, of our CESI tribe, who can't for one reason or other be with us today, they may join us through the virtues of technology. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Enda Donlon. Now, Enda is a long-time member and friend of CESI. He's also a lecturer here in this lovely establishment, and I'm not going to say any more because Enda's well able to speak for himself. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's very nice to see you here this morning, and on behalf of the staff and students of the DCU Institute of Education, I welcome you to the DCU St. Patrick's Campus for what I believe is the 44th conference of the Computers in Education Society of Ireland. Now, we were talking about this a few minutes ago before we got started, in terms of when the first event, the first CESI conference took place on what was known as the St. Patrick's College Drumcondra campus, and we can go back as far as the mid-80s, as far as I recall, for the first time the conference was here. Certainly on the CESI website there is reference to a conference in 1994, and indeed there's web pages available from that conference, and the fact that CESI had working web pages in 1994 is indeed a notable achievement. I was here at a conference in 2002, that was my first CESI conference. On the day I caught presentations from Brendan Tangney on, I believe it was Webb, Brendan. Adrienne, I think, was speaking about the schools integration projects on that particular day. So CESI is no stranger to this particular part of the world, but it is the first time that the CESI conference has been here since the DCU incorporation has taken place. And for those of you who don't know, the DCU incorporation was the process which saw the coming together of St. Patrick's College Drumcondra, Mater Dei Institute of Education, the Church of Ireland College of Education, into Dublin City University, with a number of different results, but one of those being the formation of the first Faculty of Education within the Republic of Ireland, the DCU Institute of Education. This represents the formation of the largest grouping and expertise of initial teacher education within the Republic of Ireland, and provision of teacher education across the entire continuum, from early childhood education, primary teacher education, post-primary teacher education, further education and training, continuing professional development, and master's and doctoral level research also. So Dublin City University has a rich history and culture of innovation and research with regards to education technologies. The establishment of the National Institute for Digital Learning in 2013 marks a clear commitment to the design, implementation and evaluation of online, digital and blended learning. The new DCU Institute of Education brings further expertise to this pursuit, with a long-established research interest and a wealth of experience in digital learning prominent among a number of its staff. By way of example, the launch of the DCU Lego Education Innovation Studio took place only last week on this campus, and is the product of enormous dedication and industry on the part of Professor Deirdre Butler. The studio will act as a dedicated interactive learning hub for DCU student teachers and Irish schools to develop innovative and creative approaches to teaching STEM subjects in the classroom. In addition, a programme of annual events for learners across the education continuum is also in development, beginning with the first LEGO League Junior, Leinster and Munster competitions. Now, Deirdre has very kindly agreed this morning to give a tour of the LEGO Education Innovation Studio to anyone who would like to see it. That will take place at the 11 o'clock coffee break this morning, so that's from 11 to 11:30. The studio is located in room F125. We will have signs up by the time we get out after the presentations for 11 o'clock to guide you to that room. Obviously, ask the student ambassadors also, and Deirdre herself will be departing at 11 o'clock outside to go if you'd like to go along there. So, no pressure, but if you want to see it, you're very welcome to go and take a look. It's well worth seeing. Okay, in taking a look through the conference programme this morning, a number of different things occurred to me. The first is the cross-sectoral nature of the programme. And as I've already outlined, this is something that's very close to our hearts within the DCU Institute of Education in terms of the different sectors of education represented and how much we can learn from each other in that regard. On a personal level, this is something I believe very strongly about, and I've mentioned on several occasions before. And I think any event that brings together the different sectors of education in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration and learning and sharing is to be commended and is a good event. And in fairness, CESI has always been to the forefront in this regard, and long may that continue. But learning from each other within that continuum does not only mean learning from teachers, it also means learning from our students and learning from our pupils. And that's also something that is evident in this morning's programme. I noticed during the week, during the building hype and continuity of the hashtag, that Maggie have been working hard all week on a digital presentation which is going to be shared with us this morning. I noticed also that the youth media team are going to be here with us today wearing their now familiar red t-shirts. If you see them and they ask you for an interview or a comment, please do oblige. And they're also facilitating a workshop this morning in terms of how the youth media team works and how they actually go about doing the processes they are, if you'd like to attend that as well. There's been a number of significant developments in the education technology space since the last CESI conference. And I'm not going to go into most of those because I could literally be here for the day if I do that. But I thought on a more nostalgic note, it might be nice to note one particular one. And in June or July of last year, the world of education technology and education in general lost a true visionary with the passing of Seymour Papert. Now, Seymour Papert's work, for those of you who know, is massively influential, and really, it's hard to overstate just how much Papert's work has influenced how much we do in the world of education and the world of education technology. Among a long career, many contributions are his work on constructionism and, of course, the Logo programming language, which will be known to many of you, and it's where I started with computer programming, indeed. That and an Atari 2600. Not quite the same thing. Papert's work was visionary for its time and remains enormously influential today, and indeed is very evident in the programme you have in front of you for today. For a conference programme with the theme of making connections, it is notable just how many of the presentations and workshops on offer today have a strong connection with the work of Seymour Papert. So all that remains for me to do is to renew my welcome to you here this morning, to wish you a productive and enjoyable day of learning and sharing, and in returning to the conference theme of making connections, re-establishing some old ones, I'm sure, but hopefully I'd really like to think making some new ones as well. Have a great day, and we'll see you around during the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enda, and for the reminder that some of us are around here too long, shall we say. Before the next person that we have is our keynote addressee, and that is Brendan Tangney. Brendan has already been mentioned by Enda. Brendan is a professor of computer science in Trinity. He's a fellow at TCD. He's co-director of CRITE, which is the Centre for Research in IT and Education. He is sorry, I need the glasses. Apologies for that. He's running the Masters in Technology and Learning, and he's currently highly involved and founder of Bridge 21. They're the things you can read about Brendan that are in his bio that will be accompanies the programme. But I think the outstanding thing about Brendan is that he's been very dedicated and committed to and driven by the visions for education and learning, and how technology can enhance that and be used to actually open new ideas and new versions of what education in the classroom can be. And through that, he has encouraged many, many students over many years to do so. We invited Brendan here today and his Bridge 21 team because it is an initiative which some people are familiar with, but as I speak to people in other contexts, I find that they're actually not too sure how the whole thing works. During the day, you'll be able to find that out in the various workshops that are presented. But at this point in time, I would like to give the floor to Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. Morning, everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces here, and some of us do go back a long way, right? And I'll touch on that. I'll touch on that as we're going through, and I'm delighted to see that we've got a Cork accent translator here as well for those of you that don't speak Cork. So before I start, the work I'm going to touch on, it has been done by lots of people. Some of them are here today. Some of them aren't, like Anne Fitzgibbon and Elizabeth Oldham are not here today. But this is reflecting what a whole group of people have been doing over a number of years. And these are the people who supported us. And again, some of them are represented here today. I wouldn't be able to do the work we're doing if it wasn't for the support of these people here. So, what are we interested in? First thing we're interested in is innovative or creative education, or as Fulham says, deep learning. It's sort of the broad topic of interest. But the other thing that we are sort of passionately interested in is a criticism of the technology and learning community is that the work remains at the edges, right? That we can all do, or lots of us can do, sort of boutique interventions where you can go into a classroom, do something cool, and then you move on, and the classroom reverts back to normal. And the real challenge that I think we as a community are facing is how do we mainstream this stuff? How do we take all this practice which we've developed over years, and how do we put it into the mainstream? So that's the bit that I'm particularly interested in. So as Marx said, the philosophers has interpreted the world. The point where is to change it. So I think we as a community, and all of us here, are in, I think, to varying degrees in the systemic change business. That's what we're interested in. Problem, of course, is that educational change is bloody hard. Right? It's really hard. Right? It's really, really, really hard. And the longer I'm at it, the more I realize how hard it is. So it really requires sort of a coalition of the willing, and it's all hands on deck, and we need to come at it from all sides. So I think everybody has got, we chip away at it. At times it gets frustrating at the lack of progress, but then every now and then you begin to see that actually things are changing. And I think we're at a good point at the moment. I think there would be sort of, there's a case for renewed optimism for where we are now. So this is the model that I like to use when I'm talking about technology adoption, and you can take it either as the journey that a teacher goes through, or it's an approach to a framework for how we might model change. So in the SAMR model, you start at the bottom, where you use technology for substitution or augmentation. This laptop projector I'm using here this morning, this is still a traditional setting. I'm just using the technology to sort of augment it a little bit. But the really interesting stuff happens when you move up here to modification and redefinition. When you begin to redesign the learning experience to make greater use of technology. And ultimately, when you move into a space where you create learning experiences that you couldn't have created without the technology. Right? So, Pappard's work would be at the forefront of this, the stuff that Deirdre is doing with the Lego and stuff. These are all learning experiences that you just couldn't do in a traditional way. So I'm particularly interested in those. So this is where I think we need to be at. The problem, and sort of the core argument that's behind Bridge 21, is that learning activities at the summary definition there do not sit well within the conventional school system, featuring didactic methods of teaching and learning, Victorian-style classroom, and short single-subject class periods. Instead, they're more in keeping with the widely discussed 21st century approach to learning. So I think that's sort of a fundamental tenet of where we're coming from, that if you try to shoehorn technology into, and particularly focusing on secondary school systems, if you try to shoehorn technology into your regular 40-minute class period, you're only going to get so far. Right? And we really need to look at changing the overall pedagogical model. Thankfully, anyway, so in light of the community and the remarks that Enda made at the start, I thought it was interesting just to reflect on the changing Irish educational landscape. Right? So many of us, right, would be able to remember back to IT 2000, right? And the journey from there to where we are at the moment with the digital strategy is, I think, an interesting one that I think is worth reflecting on. Mindset that underpinned IT 2000, right? Up to where we are at the moment, where certainly pedagogy and a constructivist, constructionist approach to pedagogy is center stage into what we're trying to do. So if you look at the reforms and the initiatives that are going on in secondary school systems at the moment, you got the digital strategy, you got the junior cycle reform, and you got the development of key skills. Right? And I think, or the argument that I'm making, is that to deliver on those objectives, you really need to be up here at the transformation layer in the type of use you make of technology and the type of teaching and learning that we're doing in the classroom in general. I think that's where we need to be. And if you go into the digital strategy, it uses the UNESCO framework, and it talks about, knowledge creation, which sort of maps onto the top layer of the Samurai model. So I see the whole thing, coming together fortuitously, right? I was talking to Tom Kendall here at the start, who was one of the old timers from back in the day. And he asked me, I said I was optimistic, and he said, how many times have you been optimistic over the past 15, 16 years? So I'm not sure. There's certainly been times that I haven't been optimistic, right? But I think now is a time that we can be reasonably confident that we're doing the sort of right things. Okay, so that's by way of sort of background and context of the educational setting. So what then is this Bridge 21 thing? Now, some of you will be familiar with this, and more of you hopefully might be introducing it to you for the first time. So Bridge 21 is actually three different things. Right? The first thing is that it's a pedagogical model. Right? It's a particular approach to 21st century teaching and learning. Right? The second thing it is it's a learning laboratory, right? A la Dewey. It's a place in Trinity where we run innovative workshops. And I'll show you some of that in a second. And the third thing is it's a systemic change action research project. Right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to facilitate and help that overall change agenda. Right? So it's those three things. So start with the pedagogical model side of it. So here is the swirly diagram that we use to talk about the various aspects of it. So a lot of these things are familiar, right? Project-based technology mediated, team learning, role of the teacher, and emphasis on reflection. So a lot of these things which are familiar, right, they're not rocket science in any sense, but I think we put them together in an interesting way. And particularly we have a focus on, so teamwork features in the conference programme title, right? And a very interesting project in the UK a couple of years ago called Spring, where they did a longitudinal tracking of students in various key stages who'd been introduced to teamwork, and then they tracked their grades over the year. Right? So what they found was that if you invest in teaching the students and the teachers in teamwork, it pays off very handsomely in two regards. One is in terms of students' grades in traditional assessment, and the other is in terms of students' behaviour. Right? So behavioural issues become less problematic and grades go up. Right? So bearing the huge importance of teamwork, what we've done is we have taken the teamwork model from the World Scout movement. Right? So the Scouts know how to work in teams. Right? So what we've done, and this is John Lawler would have been the man responsible for this, right? We've taken the teamwork model from the World Scout movement and we've implemented. It's a particular way of doing teams. The team structures stay formed. You don't change them. They're not selected by the participants. The team leader stays constant and has a very particular role in driving the team dynamics. So that's the teamwork model that we use. Right? We then designed the learning space. So this is Bridge 21 in Trinity. We designed the learning space with two purposes in mind. One, not to look like school. Right? We're working a lot with, hooked up with our outreach program in Trinity, the Trinity Access programs. We're working with a lot of students from DESH schools. We brought them in to give them an interesting learning experience. So we really wanted the place not to look like school. Right? We certainly succeeded in that. Right? Then the other thing is it supports the Scouts teamwork model. So this is each team has got an area which they sort of take responsibility for, but it's not blocked off from everybody else's sort of pores. In this model then, the role of the teacher, and this is Kevin Sullivan, he's presenting the Arduino workshop following on from this, right? And the role of the teacher or mentor becomes much more one of an orchestrator of learning. Right? So you're not up there standing people trying to impart information, but you're trying to scaffold and orchestrate their learning. And we might say a little bit more about that later. The other thing that this picture here tries to grasp is it's project-driven, it's deadline-oriented. Right? Project-based learning has sort of a bad reputation in some places that it's whatever you're having yourself. Right? So the way we do it is it's very highly structured. It involves deadlines. It involves students standing up and presenting, right, in some shape or form, and then it involves some whole group discussion to tease out the learning objectives of what the session was, then followed by a reflective piece. So those, I think, are sort of the key elements of the model. The other thing we did was, and this is Jake Byrne's work, is we borrowed from the design school in Stanford University, right? And they have a particular approach towards design-based learning, and we sort of adapted, we married our model with theirs. So there's a cycle that we would run people through. Even though when you go into it, it's a little bit chaotic, right? There actually is a clear structure to it. So to start off with some setup, warm-up, investigation phase, a planning, creating phase, and a presenting and a reflecting phase. And then typically you would ask the teams might iterate around here. Right? They may need to go around that a number of times. So what does this look like in practice? So here's an example. Right? This is a lesson developed by Danielle O'Donovan in the area of history. So assume that your teams are formed already and you don't need to do that. The first thing about you is just activate people's prior learning. So you do a quick little exercise. How many things can you do with a World War I helmet? Right? Anybody want to suggest anything? What can you do with a World War I helmet? You could wash in it. That's a common one. A flower pot. That's another quite common one. And then there's one or two that I wouldn't mention in mixed company. Right? So you get people thinking about it, right? So then, again, to activate prior learning, and one way we've done this is put a strip up around the wall and get people, give them post-its and get them to put up everything they know about World War I on the wall. Right? And it's surprising actually what people don't know about it. But anyway, so it activates prior learning. So that's just to get people warmed up and empathising with the subject matter. So then what you do is you create sort of the learning activity, and this is constructivist, constructionist, localised, contextual in nature. So the example here is you pick a local World War I memorial, and you get the names of a couple of soldiers off that. And then the exercise that you give the students is, come back to us in X time, depending how long you have for it, and tell us the story of those soldiers. And that literally is all the instruction that you might give them. Come back in whatever way you want to, tell us the story of those soldiers. What you would do is, you would then point them at some of the very rich databases which are out there. Right? So there's the War Memorials database, and there's one or two more. Right? And you can now do historical research by interrogating these databases yourself directly. Right? So this is the sort of thing that you couldn't have done 15 years ago. It's a type of a learning experience that it's in the transformation space. We're doing history. Right? And then you have to present that to their peers when they've done, and then teach will draw out the learning things, you populate the timeline with it, and then you reflect upon the whole thing. So that's sort of a typical Bridge 21 type lesson. So second thing is, Bridge 21 is a learning laboratory. So this is the space in Trinity. And what we've been doing here is, so we originally hooked up with the Trinity Access program in Trinity, and we're bringing transition year students in to the place for 4-day workshops. And we started off by teaching people essentially digital media literacy. Do exercises around making videos, podcast posters, that sort of thing. But we pretty soon realised that this was working. That it was having a very beneficial effect, and the students were speaking very positively of it. So since then, so that's the core transition year program, right, that we started running, and we're still running it to this day, right? But we then said, well, what other things could we do? And we've pretty much tried to use the model to teach a whole variety of subjects, right? So physics, maths, history, English, Gaeilge, right? And up to including peer learning. So what we do is we find is that if you bring them in for a week and teach them, they get the hang of the model after about 2 days. Right? If you bring them back for a second week or a third week, what you can do is you can throw really hard stuff at them. Right? So in this peer learning model, what we've done is we've given students leaving cert topics that they haven't covered, and we've asked them to prepare an innovative learning experience to teach that to their peers. And certainly the groups that do the teaching certainly know the content when they're finished. And they do all sorts of crazy and zany things. There's one team were doing the digestive system, so they got some Play-Doh, made people lay down on the ground, and they passed the Play-Doh from person to person as they role modelled what it is that the digestive system is doing. Right? They remember their digestive system. We do a lot of stuff in computer coding. Right? We'll talk about that later. We run stuff in primary schools where we get the transition years back to mentor the primary school students. The Bridge 21 model is used as the ICT module on our PME in Trinity. So all PME students in Trinity come down to the Learning Lab and they do their ICT module there. And then we also run a certificate in 21st century teaching and learning, some of whom graduates are here today, and I might say a little bit about that in a second. Just to give you a feeling for the sort of the scale of the thing, wouldn't expect you to these are various activities that we run for students and teachers. I suppose the punchline is that we've worked with at least 1,500 teachers and in excess of 12,000 students, and this is up to 15 and 16, so if we add this year's numbers on, it'll be higher than that again. So the point here is that we're doing the scale at this, at least in terms of numbers. We're doing lots of things. So what impact has all this had? Because we've been at it since late 2007, and what impact has it had? We hope it's had some. We've published a reasonable amount on it, and if you want to follow up on any of this, you can email me, or there's links to the papers from the website. So we've published on the model, we've published on approaches to computer programming, we've published a bit on teacher CPD, and then we've published a bit about the use of the model in schools. So there's a bit of research evidence there that there's at least some things going on. So the themes emerging from the research are that students develop a personal responsibility for learning. That in this model, they do seem to, leveraging off intrinsic motivation, and the students take ownership of the learning to great benefit. Right? Teamwork is reported as being very positive in enabling and facilitating all of this. Right? There's evidence of development that the students are thinking at a higher level. Right? And there's also evidence that the skills they learn in Bridge 21 are transferring back into school. Right? So these are the sort of things that people are saying. I can do things that I think I couldn't. Right? So lots of data like this coming through. Other thing that we're doing, because we've data, when we started off in 2007 and 2008, we were operational and we just get the thing up and running. But after it settled down a bit, we started collecting data and we're getting much more systematic about how we do it. So what Kevin Sullivan is currently doing is he's looking at data going back to 2010, 2011. Right? And we're now able to follow up on that cohort of students and see what's happening. So we've got immediate reactions at the end of the workshop or 3 months later, and now we're able to go back and we started to methodically mine that data going back 5 or 6 years. And that's producing some very interesting findings. So one is that there's definitely a bump in students' key skills. Right? That's immediately after the workshop, and also 3 months and 1 year afterwards. We have data that shows that bump in their generic skills is there. Interesting thing, and we're just beginning to unpack this at the moment, right? Is some of those students are now in third level. And the things that they're saying are that what they found was that they were better prepared for third level because of their experience of Breach 21. So you get these shy teenagers in from different schools, and you mix them all in together for a week, and a fair few relationships have started in Breach 21. I think it's still at the relationship level, right? But they then report that when they go on to third level, meeting people, speaking up in class, leading groups, and learning with technology are all skills that they found that they were better prepared by the time they got to third level. So, third piece then is the systemic change argument. So, and for this, we've hooked up with the Trinity Access Programme again. We've got a project called TA21 that I'm not going to talk about this morning in the interest of time, but it's a very close partnership with the Trinity Access Programme, and we're doing a number of things there from the access side and from technology and learning side. Right? And I suppose the argument that I make is, I've had lots of conversations with people over the years about, technology change, etc. And, because from a computing background, we have lots of conversations with the technology companies about how do we get coding and computing more stuff into schools. And I suppose the argument to make is that if we start with a framework of we're doing 21st century learning, if that's the platform we're starting from, then it's much easier to integrate technology into the classroom, and then in that context it's much easier to do computer science and STEM, right? If that's the platform that you build on. And if you've got a platform that looks like this, then we believe, and this is the Trinity Access Programme, we believe that that's a very good framework for addressing the educational disadvantage piece, and we also believe it's a good framework for addressing the gender piece. And one of the programmes that we run is a girls' coding project, where we're teaching coding in girls-only secondary schools, because we have girls-only secondary schools, and girls in general don't do computing for some strange reason. Right? So we're operating here at a number of different levels. Right? So we work with students, which is the easy part. We have a number of offerings with teachers, right? We then work with schools directly to help them in the change management process, and then we try and operate at the system level to inform policy and to publish research, right? But at a national and a European level, right? And then I said those are sort of the headline numbers up to last year, right? So the teacher CPD piece is actually the key driver in the whole change process, right? As most of you will all know, and you're the vanguard, you're the early adopters, and I think we're probably beyond the early adopters in this community, given the number of people in the room. So what we find is that the role of the teacher changes quite significantly when you move to a model like this, right? And a sort of things that teachers say are, the kids taught me a lot. I would have been a chalk and talk, and now sometimes I say nothing in class. Right? And that's really interesting that you're requiring. It's all front-loaded. You do the preparatory work beforehand, right? And then sometimes the teacher has to say, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to let the team fail. Right? I'm going to let them get it wrong. Right? Not catastrophic wrong, but you've got to sit back and not tell them. Let them work it out themselves, and then intervene as appropriate, right? As the team or different teams need. So the way we've tried to capture this is in this graph here. That if you move from a teacher-directed to a teacher-orchestrated learning model, you go from a dependent learner to a self-directed learner, right? Motivation and student autonomy go up, right? Student responsibility for their own learning goes up, and the teacher goes through the sort of cathartic experience. I remember one teacher saying to me once, he says, "That's all very well, but could you give me a push?" Right? And she said like standing at the deep end of a swimming pool, and she needed some encouragement to go through it. So an analogy we use that it's a bit like if you're a golfer or a tennis player, it's a bit like changing your grip or changing your swing, and it's going to feel uncomfortable and might actually get a little bit worse before it starts getting better. But if you persevere with it and adopt it, out you come the other side into a place that we think is a much more positive space for everyone. So the approach we have to CPD is we follow sort of an immersive model. You can't PowerPoint Bridge 21. Right? So what we always say to people is, you got to come in, you got to look at it, and ultimately you got to do it. Right? So what we would do in the teacher CPD cycle, whether it's in the course or whether we're working with schools, is you need to have some sort of immersive experience where the teacher experiences the model as an authentic learner. And then we go into a sort of a modified version of the Japanese lesson study cycle, if you're familiar with that, right? Sort of a COG type reflective cycle, where ideally you get teachers co-planning learning activities together, right? Because you can't be expecting the pupils to work in teams if the teachers don't do it, right? So you co-plan and ideally deliver, or at least observe the delivery of lessons together, put it into action, and then come back, evaluate it and refine it, and then go into a cycle like that. And we would offer workshops with schools with the initial one, or to go in and help them as they go through the cycles. So we tried lots of things with schools and teachers over the years. We then, through this TA21 project, we are offering this postgraduate certificate in 21st century teaching and learning. And that's proved actually to be the biggest driver of change that we've managed to do. Right? So it's a level 9 certificate, run jointly. We run some of the sessions in Google, which is very interesting from a psychological point of view, to be able to take teachers into the archetypical 21st century workplace and see what that's like. Right? So, we have some teachers here who've had the opportunity to present on the fancy stage in Google, right? And I think it's a great empowerment to be able to show people that I think it's not just a handy location. I think there's a subtle psychological thing going on there. Right? So these are the sort of things that we cover on the course, and in the introduction to the model, a bunch of stuff around coding, right? And then some stuff around STEM education. Computational thinking and stuff, right? So what impact has all this had, or is it having? So we're very fortunate in the TA21 project that we initially started off with a cohort of 11 schools dotted around the country. And we started off with their second year students. And what we have is we've got data from the students and the teachers over the 3 years of the program, right? So we're currently in 16, 17. Right? So we're now able to go back and see what effect has this engagement of Breach 21 and other things in the project, what effect has that on them? And we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to secure funding to continue this for another 3 or 4 years. So we're actually able to follow that cohort, the second years, right through to see what happens to them post-Eagles and post-secondary school. And we'll also be able to look to see what's happened to the students that came after them. So this is very, very exciting to be able to have such a large data set as that. Yeah, it's 11,000 students. So just some highlights from that data, right? We've got a control group thing going on here, so we've got control group students and teachers from other schools not involved in the projects. And we're showing a bump on each of these things here, right? Statistically significant bump in, under each of these areas. And there's a whole bunch more data behind it. Just to give you a feel that we have, not just we think it's good, we have some data which seems to suggest it is actually having an impact. Right. So, if you look at the slide I had earlier on the current reform process for all these things that are going on, our suggestion is that Breach 21 has a contribution to make here. We're not claiming a monopoly on knowledge, but we're claiming that it's got a contribution to make to speak to the digital strategy, to speak to the junior cycle reform and key skills, and to speak to the framework. So, I'll stop there.
Brendan was just asking me about the questions, but we're on a very tight time schedule. However, Brendan will be around for the day, and there are quite a number of Bridge 21 people around. I think you made a few points which I personally find very encouraging, to say the least. That change in education is difficult. But I think what Bridge 21, what many people here exemplify, is that when the going gets tough, well, the tough bloody well get going. And despite what is happening at a bureaucratic level within education at any given time, that innovation is happening on the ground. The second point, though, I think, and it's a really pertinent one, is the one about scale and system-wide change. because if you're here today, then you have done innovative stuff in your classroom or are certainly thinking about it. But there is a larger population who are perhaps unaware of what it might be. And it is wonderful, I think, that Bridge 21 has the advantage of the longitudinal aspect. It has that research element that is so important when you come to the department and various authorities to say, well, look, this is evidence-based. I myself have gone through the Bridge 21 experience in the classroom. I wish I was a lot younger now, and that was the only modus operandi I had for learning, because it suited my learning style very much. However, I think it has a great deal to offer, and I think it's interesting too that Brendan mentioned that the primary sector, the Bridge 21, as the evidence is very much for second level, but I do think that the whole concept of how Brendan has presented things is holistic. It's from that start to the finish, the interesting link into third level, the difference it made to students just in the way they coped with the difference in third level too. So at this point in time, Brendan, thank you so much for the insightful presentation, for all the work that you have done and your team, many names that you had up at the beginning, because there's no doubt about it, it only works if we all work together. Thank you so much. Now, if you were to look at your programme at this stage, you would think you're going straight into the presentations. However, I'm going to take a little bit of your time, if I may. When I stood here last year, I had the sad duty, really, of referring to a tremendous colleague, Bianca Ghrogáin, who had passed very suddenly on us, but who is a shining light, and her work continues to be a shining light to everybody who's engaged in innovation in the classroom at whatever level, and breaking those boundaries, putting those walls down. The Irish Research Council said that they would sponsor an award called the Bianca Ghrogáin Memorial Award. And CESI's role was in the assessment of the various projects that were invited to that award. Now, I'm going to invite Miriam Judge to come here today. Miriam worked very closely with Bianca and has indeed worked very closely with the Irish Research Council, and I'll ask her to take over from here.
Thank you all very much. It is indeed an honour for me to be here today to actually make the Bianca Ghrogáin Memorial Awards. Bianca, I think, was known to everybody here in this particular room. She was an inspirational teacher, and she was actually on the first year of a PhD programme under my supervision in DCU. And obviously, Bianca was making great inroads, in terms of the impact that she was having on education. And in light of her sudden death, I approached the Irish Research Council, who in fact were sponsoring Bianca's PhD programme. It was a 4-year programme that she had embarked on, to ask, if possible, if they would honour Bianca in some way. The Irish Research Council graciously came back and said they were very happy to do this, that even in the short time that Bianca had been enrolled as a PhD student, that she had done tremendous work for them already at that point in time, and they were really very, very honoured to actually support this initiative. So in terms of the initiative, in order to keep it in line with and be true to Bianca, CESI decided that we would make 2 awards, one with a research focus to acknowledge the fact that Bianca had embarked on a research career, and 2 with a practitioner focus, and that indeed was to honour the fact that Bianca had for many years been a fantastic inspirational teacher. So the call went out on the CESI website just back there in October, and we had a number of very interesting submissions, and as always in these situations, it's very, very difficult to make that call. But we have decided that there were 2 significant award winners, one under the practitioner category and one under the research category. And the research category winner is Claire Daly. Claire. And the practitioner winner is Mark Baldwin. And, you know, as time is short, just very quickly, Claire's project is in the area of virtual reality, and Mark's is in the area of the use of tablet technologies in classrooms to support history teaching. And at this point in time, I would be honoured to ask Bianca, parents, Pauline and Jerry, who are here with us today, to come up to present the award to the Bianca Ghrogáin award recipients.
If we could have a photo opportunity there, please. It's very, very special. Now, without further ado, I have one or two housekeeping duties to do before we start, and that you can go to your various presentations. If you would take out your programmes, please. I have to say that we're going to reduce the stress in the afternoon for one of the timelines in what you have to choose from. Due to illness, unfortunately, Alan Gorman at the 2:15 session, online learning on school placement, is unavailable to be with us. So if you want to just take that out of the programme, please. The second thing I want to mention is that there are one or two presentations taking place in computer room D318. Now D318 is a little bit of a walk. There will be signs. We do have student ambassadors to direct you, but just if you're going for it, just be aware that it's going to take you a few minutes to get there. Everything else is very local. Tea and coffee was laid on this morning, as you saw outside, but there is also, along with the vendors in E224, what we did was we split the coffee into two spaces so that people would get it quickly, number one, and have room to move around and to sit down. So don't forget, E224 has another coffee station and tea and biscuits and everything else that might help you to get in there. I think that is it. Enjoy. You have your few minutes to get to wherever you want to be. Most of it is in this area, in these spaces. So enjoy the day, and thank you very much to everybody.
Can Claire and Mark just come back down again just for a moment, please?
Yeah, they're intolerant, like. Yeah, that's great.
I must be using the that's why yeah, sure. Yeah, well, he had a long one this week, so he was talking about it for 15 minutes. Yeah, we're flying, and you're wrapped up around here. Yeah. And just have someone standing there for that one part. Super, it looks great, guys.
You okay?
Yeah. Lost more than that.
Wouldn't have a bit of tape I could borrow, just a bit of masking tape, because... Oh, you do? Oh, I normally have a roll in the bag, but for some reason it's not there. Yeah, it's just the projector cables are across, and I just can see somebody tripping on it, so I'll bring that up now. Thank you very much.
I'll be back.
So I think we want to get underway. Yeah.
Oh no, take it down.
Yeah.
Just take the photographs.
It's nearly a case of friends come down lower, but can you all hear us here? My voice usually carries, I'm a teacher. When I saw this session in the programme, I begged to chair it so that I couldn't be relocated anywhere else and thereby miss it. We just know that having Deirdre and Mark here, we're going to get a really exciting session. I love the way they described it as a fishbowl session in their blurb. And I know it'll really challenge us and make us think about the areas in which they both have worked so well here in DCU. I won't waste more of the time as we got off to a slightly late start, except I must announce one room change. Can you look at your programmes, please? And will you look at your programmes, please? At 10:30, in the fourth column from the left, as I look at this, it says project using e-portfolios to foster transversal skills. That is swapped with the session at 12 o'clock of Ghrogáin. So those two sessions, the fourth from the left at 10:30 and the first from the left at 12, are exchanged, but they hold on to their rooms, I gather. So the e-portfolios will be in E201, and the one at Ghrogáin will be in 214, will be here. I hope we have that right. I gather there was some mixed printing, slightly older versions of the programme. Thank you very much for that, and I now do the real business by throwing the ball to Deirdre and Mark to run the session.
Thanks a million, Elizabeth. I'm Deirdre Butler, and I'm based here on the St. Patrick's campus in DCU, and my role here is digital learning.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Mark Brown, and I think this is my fourth CESI conference from memory. We'll just see if we can get the slides to change. As some of you, I hope, know, I've been here at DCU for just over 3 years, coming from New Zealand in the role of Director of the National Institute for Digital Learning.
And as I said, my role here is at the what we call the primary, post-primary area. So I'm focused on the schools here, very much on teacher professional development and pre-service.
And then my focus tends to be more on higher education, but Deirdre and I work very closely because teacher education, of course, straddles both higher education and the schooling sectors. What we've done with the metaphor of a fishbowl is we really want to put a spotlight on the two themes really of the conference. One, learning transformations, but also connections. So I'll hand over to Deirdre.
And what we're trying to do is I'm trying to ask the question, and I want people to try and sort of interrogate it and sort of come with us and say, like, are we making the right connections? And are we making the right connections in order to forge and explore, and this is really important, new transformative frontiers? That's the crunch. Are we making the connections to actually forge and explore new transformative frontiers? And particularly, are digital literacies enough? Is it enough to have digital literacies? When we look at it, what dispositions are required for an uncertain future? You know, we're talking about different layers of different things. Is it enough to be digital literate? Do we have to actually think and get under the surface and say, what else do we need to do? Do we actually need to become digitally fluent? What is it we need to do to be prepared to meet and solve the problems of the future?
So the context for this presentation really came about in a conversation we had in relation to this initiative in April, the All Aboard Week. I don't know, have many of you heard about this initiative? There's a stand, I believe, in the conference. Hosted or facilitated by the National Forum for the Enhancement of Higher Education, Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, so that needs to be kind of acknowledged. The All Aboard initiative is a framework for thinking about digital learning, literacies, and so forth. A number of higher ed institutions are involved. You may be from one of those institutions. DCU, for various reasons, chose not to participate, but what triggered really this conversation between ourselves that we needed to talk.
And the reason we needed to talk is we really felt that we have to really start taking a deeper look at digital skills, digital literacies, digital competencies. What do we mean by them? We're surrounded by a plethora of language. We all use them very sort of loosely, but do we really understand what we mean when we're actually engaged with this? And just in terms of the literature, I mean, it is literally laden with terms. For example,
yeah, I think this would be one of the seminal books if you're interested in the field of digital literacy. You can access it online. 2008, in fact, the term digital literacy was only first introduced in 1997. It was interesting to see the slide earlier, you were using the term computer literacy. These terms have a way of morphing and not always necessarily carrying a meaning with them. So the quote on the slide here illustrates there are just lots of different interpretations of what we mean by digital literacy. And in fact, the All Aboard project, which is again a higher ed focused project, in its first phase, where it did a synthesis of the literature, it identified, I think, over 100 of these models and frameworks that purport to support digital literacy or capability or whatever language is used, because there are different terms. It emphasises again the point that there is no single kind of framework that's generally agreed. Having said that, I think it's worth us just spend the next few minutes giving you some insight into some frameworks, some of the better well-known ones.
And the fact that there are so many frameworks is indicative of the fact that we're trying to understand the landscape. Okay, we're trying to actually come up with language to try and say, well, how do we describe what's going on? This is probably one that you are all, most of you here will know. We used to know it as PCK, those of us who are long enough around before technology really hit the scene, okay? So we're looking at sort of pedagogical content knowledge from Schulman. And that is the sort of frame that's used right across many of our pedagogical courses, okay? When we are preparing teachers for the field, do they have the content knowledge? Do they have the pedagogical knowledge? But in the advent of the technology, and with the fact that we're in a technological society that's complex, now Mishra and Kohler actually layered on what we call the T, which stands for the technology. So now when you actually sort of begin to pull this apart, you say not only do you have pedagogical knowledge, not only do you have content knowledge, but now you have sort of content or technological knowledge. And then you've all the intersections. Those of you who are in maths would always love all the Venn diagrams and all the intersections. But the sweet spot is in the middle. Okay? So how do we achieve that sweet spot? Where the technology is not bolted on, it's not added on, where the technology is actually embedded and it's seamless between the content knowledge and the pedagogical knowledge. And how can we actually design programs and design learning experiences that immerse teachers, that they can actually understand what this means. Remember, when we get students in here, I thought when Schools IT 2000 happened in 1997, I did not think that 20 years later that I would still be tearing my hair out with the level of sort of understanding and sort of fluency with technology that our students have, okay? So what we're trying to do here is immerse the students in different types of learning experiences so they can actually redesign and imagine what learning can be for primary and post-primary teachers. Do you know what I mean? So that's just one model that tries to capture what we're about. How do we describe what's going on here?
What I think is interesting about this model is it historically was developed in the schooling sector. There's a little bit of use in higher ed, but again, primarily in the interface with teacher education.
Yeah.
The other thing is this version you're seeing recognises as an adaptation the ecological context that I think Deirdre just referred to, that it's not isolated.
And it's been heavily researched. There's a lot of research around this model.
So one of the disconnections, if you like, and focus on tensions here, I'm now introducing a framework quite recently from the higher education sector out of GIST in the UK, which is very well known for its work. And I suppose one of the themes or connections or disconnections we're kind of unpacking here is this sort of two parallel universes in some respects. GIST's framework here for digital literacy has been evolved in a few subsequent iterations, but it's useful to see the different dimensions. One thing that's relatively contemporary, and that this is only a few years old, is the focus on well-being, on the need to look at social responsibility. And there's an interesting quote there around what digital literacy, not literacies, that's another thing that's evolved, actually means. Again, in the higher education sector, Doug Belshaw is well known for his 8 elements of digital literacies. Except Doug would probably cringe with me putting it on a slide like this, because what he points out, do note the C's, and I'll come back to probably the critical and civic ones if we get time, but Doug points out that everything in relation to literacy is contextual. And so he doesn't like putting something into a framework or a diagram that it doesn't capture really the depth, what's often in academic literature talked about as the social practice of literacies. And then in the European context, both in higher ed and the schooling sector, we've got the European Commission working on a number of things. There's a context framework, there's a capability framework. Some of these are layered in the discourse of economics, which is infused within the thinking around what way we should be bringing digital technologies into our education system?
Many of you are probably very familiar with this, particularly those in the schooling sector, because this is the UNESCO framework, and it underpins a lot of the work that's happened in the digital strategy for schools. And what's interesting is the fact that you have the sort of schooling sector and the higher ed sector, and perhaps the schooling sector have sort of a little bit of a steal on the march in the fact that they've tried to tackle these things for a long time. Many of us are growing old and grey, you know, as we sort of progress through the decades of trying to sort of understand what's going on here. The reason I particularly like this framework is the fact that it captures the theoretical underpinnings, the philosophy, and doesn't look at sort of skills per se, but actually looks at the ecosystem. It actually takes the entire system, the context, and actually looks at it's a matrix that actually looks at all the elements within the system, and it doesn't just focus on the technology, this technocentric piece of it. It actually looks at policy, curriculum and assessment, the pedagogy, the actual technology itself. It looks at the organisation and administration, and looks at teacher professional learning. So it takes all the complex elements. And the consultative paper we wrote in 2013 actually presented this framework as a way of asking questions that needed to be answered and examined for all the different areas in the system, okay? And then taking this system, you could actually look at it and actually you begin to describe where possibly the system is, where you are as an individual, where your school could be. So the first one, if you look at it, here you look at tech literacy. And you look at yourself and say, well, where are we along here? Then we hope that people can actually put in structures that will enable people to move to knowledge deepening and actually then to knowledge creation. So it's a way of sort of seeing the world and how, so it's not sort of totally based in sort of the pure economics, but actually in looking at the potential of a society. And that's why that paper was written, the consultative paper, it was written towards a learning society. You just look at the language that's used over the last few decades. We started, if you looked at the slides that were done for IT 2000, you were looking at the information society. Then people realised information wasn't enough. They were talking about the knowledge society. They reckoned there was something more than information. But then people began to realise, hang on a minute here, the focus is on learning, towards a learning society, because we need to adapt and change all the time. So that's just sort of the background to that type of framework that I would put up my hand and state my biases, that this is one that I like.
So I think it's fair to say this is one of the most mature and rich frameworks, most well developed, and I'd probably add also when referring to the learning society, that tension that exists between the knowledge economy and the learning society, here that new technologies are being promoted for other ends. And in some respects, I think one of the takeaway messages is there are all these frameworks and not all the frameworks are equal. They all offer something in many respects, and I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to give you a model to perhaps plot them in the way they make connections in different ways. So let me just populate these quadrants I'm going to put here. Let's just, for the sake of it, have at one end we've got frameworks that embed the technologies in rich ways, authentic ways, as distinct from bolting them on to an existing curriculum. That's the y-axis. Let's now put, for the want of something to start with, ones that are validated, that have been well-researched first frameworks, and there are a number of them that are untested. They're just concepts, they're just ideas, they haven't really been validated, so I've got unvalidated. I suppose if I was to then populate the quadrants, and the sweet spot or the rich part you want to be in is in that top right-hand quadrant, where it's deeply embedded and validated, TPAC would very clearly fall into that quadrant. There are all sorts of, well, I don't think I know of a framework would have as much literature related to it as TPAC does. But let's change the x-axis, and this time keeping embedding and bolting on, let's have a look at those that focus on skills as distinct from deeply rich around pedagogical beliefs. And for me, that's probably where the UNESCO framework understands fundamentally that the work we do is about change, it's complex, and if we don't change teachers' beliefs and bring teachers with us in the change process, then you're not going to have the results you might be wishing. changing it again, this time decontextualised versus contextualised frameworks. So some of the frameworks that exist just kind of operate independent from, if you like, inverted commas, reality. And Doug Belshaw's framework that I introduced and why I gave the quote there is fundamentally says that it's entirely contextualised, that what constitutes literacy itself from a sociological, socio-political perspective, actually literacy is always a contested thing. Who's defining literacy? That has to be seen in the context. It can't be decontextualised. I've got many more to add. You could come up with your own here, but one of the other tensions of these frameworks is an emphasis on functional literacy as distinct from critical literacy. And even some of the more popular frameworks that are focusing on schools, that's for understandable reasons that governments don't necessarily always want truly critically educated citizens. There is a strong emphasis on functional literacy. So I haven't got good examples really to say that here's one that's really rooted within critical literacy. And when I mean critical literacy, I'm talking about understanding that the technology we've got in itself is at the root of many of the unsustainable problems we're facing as humanity. That the technology is not neutral. It's not just about learning how to use it. It's learning when not to use it and how we might need to change it. The last one I've got here is just between frameworks that really reproduce reproduction discourse, not really challenging at all. And in some respects, the word integration we used to use, curriculum integration, and I picked that up in the Keynote. We don't change the system if we just integrate. We're not going to be, as the other the other point talks about, have a transformative agenda, a mission that really is about doing things differently. So you can plot these frameworks in this way, and hopefully it's a useful exercise. I think if I just come back since we began this talk because of the context of the All Aboard week, I think one of the risks of frameworks like All Aboard and many others, as you see the quote here in the definition of digital literacies, to fit someone within living for learning and working in a digital society. I just don't see, and we completely agree here, that education is about fitting people in society. It is about preparing people who can change and shape and make society something much more equitable and fair and so forth.
So if you look at the language in the digital strategy for schools, and that's what we're just looking at here is language, because language actually demonstrates what the thinking behind it is. You look at the digital strategies for schools talks about engaged thinkers, active learners, knowledge constructors, and global citizens to participate fully in society. We're looking at trying to develop makers and shapers who are actually focused, because we're running out of time, we're actually focused on, the next slide, who are actually focused on things like being able to be in a position to be actually tackle these sustainable goals. Problems that we have to look at, should make sure one of them just take that we have ensure that we have inclusive and quality education for all and promote lifelong learners. That's just one I've taken out of the number of goals that are there. And they're the things we have to keep in mind as we prepare our people and look at transforming our education. So in summary, to take away, there's no single framework. There's lots of them as we try to understand this space. It involves really complex relationships. We have to keep sight of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, are we making the right connections in order to forge and explore new transformative frontiers? Not to fit people, but to actually make so that we can actually have transformative futures. So, we want to hear your thoughts, debates, disagree, whatever. We're just throwing it out there for discussion as we try to grapple with these wicked problems as well.
Thank you very, very much. We had a slightly soft beginning. Yeah. Maybe we could take one or two questions or disagreements or discussions quickly. Who'd like to fire one off? Don't all speak at once.
John.
I think the language is vital and really, really important, and the language you use, I suppose, lets people understand where our philosophy is and so on. But the one of the challenges we have is moving away from language that's kind of almost instilled in the system, right? So, you know, I agree totally that we need to be moving away from integrating ICT to embedding ICT. Integrating ICT has become so embedded in our system that we have a challenge to try and kind of help people see beyond that. And I think, the digital strategy for schools is very much focused on looking at the whole context of the school, looking at the whole context of teaching, learning and assessment, and understanding where ICT can really be embedded in there and transform. So the challenge is often in choosing the right language, but overcoming the fact that that language is becoming instilled in our system.
One thing, if I can speak, because I've got relatively fresh eyes looking at the schooling strategy, is implicit in it as well as explicit, is the need for the framework to take into account evaluation and sustainability, so self-sustaining. And that's one of the problems that we faced in the past. Very few of the frameworks build in evaluation.
And we have to remember, key to all this is people. You can have all the frameworks you like, but what's really important is that people make change. So wrapped around the framework, a really, really strong piece is actually, if we want to instill or start or even sustain change, is actually we need to work with people, challenge people's understandings and beliefs, and move forward. Yes, that's us in our pink face.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. The debate and discussion and agreements or disagreements hopefully will continue throughout the day.
The slides are already on SlideShare there if you want to quickly grab that, or it's just my M. Brown's website, and we know that we had to kind of rush through that quite quickly. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Well,
by the way, we hope that room change was correct. Just look out for any further redirections as we come to close sessions. Sorry, yes, I was in the chair for the last one. We got a question from Reach.
That's no problem. No problem.
It is indeed. Richard, how are you getting on? Actually, Eileen Freeman, I was co-chairing this joining us here, so if you don't know. No problem. And she got past. So, good morning and welcome to this presentation. My first thing is make apologies for Anna. She, a flood on the train in Kerry got in the way this morning. In her despair, we've rejigged the presentation somewhat. I'm still presenting part of her slides, so I'll speak to the slides for that. She did say if you want to get her on the phone, give her a ring. We talked about Skyping. Just felt that maybe with the 20-25 minutes that might be just overreaching slightly. As much as you said, well, you're at the CESI Conference, surely they could Skype and surely they could do it live. But we felt maybe not. So not only am I presenting today, thank you for the LERO, for the consortium researchers who worked on this report of vision of computer science in upper second level education internationally, which was a research consortium of LERO members, EPI-STEM, which is the National Centre for STEM in the School of Education in University of Limerick, and the third level computing forum. So on top of that is Anna as well, who's a key member of the team. So without further ado, that is the apologies, and I'm just going to keep it on the timeline. So to give you a background to the study itself, in July there was LERO and the consortium researchers took on the research project, which started in August, to look at 5 jurisdictions covering 14 research questions. So it was a desktop study looking at the official curriculum documents, peer-reviewed research, and whatever medias were available within those jurisdictions. So that was Ontario, New Zealand, Israel, Scotland, and England. The research questions could break into 4 categories: the challenges in the field, the course content and learning outcomes, the nature of the subject itself, and teacher professional development. So at the time, that's how they were parsed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend my parts of the research going through the findings of that, the major findings. The report is available on the NCCA website, so if you want to have a look at that, it's only 140 pages, nicely abridged downwards. And then the second partition, I'm going to go through Anna's slides, and I will speak to those slides, I suppose, as much as anything else. I did see them in Dublin Castle a couple of weeks ago, but at the time I was going through relief of having presented myself, so my recollection isn't so good. So the rationale and motivations. So the first challenge in the field that came from the jurisdictions and the research itself is the requirement to have a very clear rationale and motivation for the introduction of computer science onto our curriculum. That as they went, whether to revision or whether to introduce computer science, it was critically important that all stakeholders had an awareness of what the benefits were. Because it is a challenge, as within introducing any new curriculum, so to be very, very, very clear on what the rationale and motivations were. So the first we looked at was educational. And what came from the literature very much was obviously this term computational thinking. But before that, it was really that computer science is about problem solving. It's about the articulation of problems and stepping through steps in a computational way to lead to a solution. A critical educational skill that was pretty much the focus on. Computer science is the existential STEM subject. It involves science, technology, engineering, and maths. In fact, if you look at the different naming of computer science internationally, you'll often see software engineering, you see mathematical computer science itself, and computer technology. So it encompasses the STEM concept, I suppose, and equally it underlies that. A lot of the breakthroughs within the STEM subjects themselves are coming from the use of computational power and computational thinking. The social and cultural were very much to the fore. The importance of having people not just using technology, but actually being creators with technology. The importance of that very much that society and the younger generation seem to be using it more so than creating with it, and the importance of highlighting the innovation and creativity that can be used with technology and computer science. Reacting to society's needs, and society's going this way. So in each of the jurisdictions you had coding clubs, and you had a kind of groundswell of people in society, parents and children and teachers and other stakeholders. And we're very much leading the charge. It was very much actually reflective, going back to the 80s, where now if you go into bookshops, you'll see books about programming and computing in the children's section. It's there's the society itself is leading the charge towards computer science and computing on the curriculum itself. There was also very much a focus on inclusion, that introducing, giving people of gender and all different races and all different ages the opportunity to experience computer science younger was seen to actually to enhance their numbers and the opportunity to take computer science later on, whether in third level or as a career. So that was very important. That inclusion in society was a theme that came through a lot. And of course the creativity, creating an entrepreneurial culture. Computer science is about innovation, creativity, problem solving. It's the skills of an entrepreneur. So there's that innovation and entrepreneurial aspect is very, very important. The economic development, the amount of jobs, I suppose, within Ireland, we look at it, but internationally, there's around 105,000 jobs in Ireland between multinational and indigenous companies that work in the technology sector. So the economic development and jobs speaks for itself, but it was a balance, and each of them is overlapping within the rationale and motivations, but more so, it was having a clear statement of the importance of the benefit. So that was one of the challenges that was faced by the jurisdictions as they re-established or brought in. Another key challenge that was there was the clarity in terminology. That computing and computer science, depending on the jurisdiction, it's called many different things. And leading from that was confusion. You know, there was a feeling that people were doing computer science, were doing computing, you know, were they doing IT, ICT? There's a lot of confusion between all the different stakeholders, the children themselves, their parents, the teachers. Is this computer science? Surveys coming back from research in Scotland, students found it very boring. This computer science is very boring. As it turned out, they were doing more of using Word technologies, Excel spreadsheets and Word. They weren't really exploring the more innovation and creativity part of coding and programming. So it was that confusion, which indeed an illusion that they were doing computing. There was this kind of illusion that there was maybe, I suppose, holding up progression as well. So that was another factor, this lack of clarity in terminology. And for the profession itself, a lack of identity. It's a very young profession. And what was happening was calling it informatics or computer science and computer studies, ICT, ITT. There was this confusion, you know, between the profession. And to recruit new people in the profession, it's very, very important there was a clarity what the role was, that they could build a profession. So the report itself followed from Simon Ferber's report to the Royal Academy in 2012, where he disaggregates ICT into the three constituent parts, as in computer science, information technology, and digital literacy. The idea here is not that playing one off the other. All three are very, very important in a modern education. The idea here is to make computer science visible, that referring to the scientific discipline of computer science, the principles of algorithms, data structures, programming, systems architecture, design, problem solving. So within the report and within the approach, the research questions looked within these terms and used these definitions. The course content and learning outcomes. So as we look through the official documentation and the research-based articles, computer science itself, there was substantive course content available. There was substantive agreement on what a computer science course would look like. What are the components? So as you went through each jurisdictions, the structure was pretty much there. There was a widespread kind of agreement. Now there's nuances and there's this localization and contextualization, but certainly what the core elements were in place. What happened within a lot of the jurisdictions, say like English, which had ICT as a GCSE and an A level, there was a re-emphasis on computer science, on revision. So much so in England that they actually took the term ICT out of the curriculum and now call it computer science for clarity and for that visibility. It's a focus on computer science as a discipline and away from computing as a tool. So that was the ICT, the statistics, the participation in the ICT, GCT and A level was dropping continually. It was a problem for the system itself. And what they were seeing was that students, that use was not engaging to the level that they would anticipate. So the introduction and a reintroduction and refocus was a critical intervention within that system. Programming itself was a central component of all the curriculums we looked in each of the jurisdictions. So it was pretty much, as the Israelis would call it, the zipper principle, where you have the conceptual, the theoretical nature of computer science, and then you have the active learning. So that interweaving of theory and practice, that one went side by side, that way of kind of engaged and active and experiential learning. So the coding lent itself to be very an engagement with the students, very much an active learning. Survey in the UK by Barclays found that students found that computing and coding was the most popular subject that they had. 24% of students had come back favouring computing as their favourite subject. So that was kind of, students do like coding, they enjoy it, it's fun. Programming for problem solving and computational thinking, not just for coding itself and the activity of coding. One of the aspects is that very much students may just get in a coding environment and be very distracting. But the emphasis in the curriculum and the design is very much about problem solving, computational thinking. So much so where the CS Unplugged was used a lot to encourage that algorithmic thinking, the conceptual computational thinking. I'm doing time. So we looked at programming methods and tools across the jurisdiction. What we found there was that university, that the programming language was prescribed locally, that it was left to the teacher or the school to decide what was the programming language that they would use. But very often that came down to the teacher's own experience, what was supported, where the resources were, and equally what the examination boards in a number of the countries, what languages they would follow. Interestingly, university across Scratch was the drag and drop base was the introductory language used. So very often the specification was the drag and drop language plus the text-based language as they moved on. Scratch allowed them a lot of learnings of the competition, thinking and problem solving, without the cognitive barrier of dealing with the syntax at the beginning. So that was very, very important. The most popular languages in upper second level, Java, Python, PHP. So there's a mixture there. Java was pretty much to the front. Very much the specification came that it wanted to be a real-world programming language that was of an industry standard, conservative mainstream. So again, it was left to a local choice, but there was uniformity that came across due to resources and what was supported. So participation. Each of the jurisdictions, computer science, computer studies was offered as an elective, so students could vote with their feet. Now the one thing is we look at these figures, and certainly the rates are low, especially across the late adopters, England 2014, Scotland 2012. They're still growing capability and capacity. They're still in transition between an ICT curriculum and a computer science curriculum, so there's that period of time that the A-level ICT is just no longer being offered from last September. So the rates are low. We're growing in many instances. So I'll just give you a few snapshots of where that is at. So in the Scottish, the advanced hires, which is supposed to be the equivalent to A-level, looking at the blue here, which is computer science. I don't know how well these are showing up there. You might see them a little bit better. So we're looking at 3.7%. Now we grouped within the report with the natural sciences to give a comparison. Because again, you can't match like for like with the likes of an A-level or the advanced hires because students take less subjects. So here we see that with the natural sciences, it was roughly a ratio of 1 computer science student to 6 taking a natural science, taking the natural science type subject. In Israel, which is the other end of the scale, which is the longest established in 1998, when they revised their curriculum, you have a scenario where 14 is roughly the second most popular science subject in the Israeli curriculum, with 14% on average, taking it in 2010 when the last data from the IBS was available. So it's very popular uptake. Now there is no doubt social and cultural and historic reasons for the differences there. But what's very, very interesting in relation to participation in Israel is how that follows through into society, into third level, and equally into participation in employment. So where it is, you have 37% participation of females in ICT professions. So that follows through this level of participation. So I'll come to actually, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So female participation rates were very low, with the exception of Israel, which I'll actually show in a minute. But when girls did take computer science, they tended to achieve better grades. So that was actually, funny enough, a headline that kind of caught the attention, I think it was in the social medias. But when you seem to think of it, girls tend to do better anyway with the higher level grades across subjects and curriculum. So I don't think it's that much of a surprise. It's a nice headline grabber, but it is interesting to see that once they get involved, they do very, very well. In Scotland, in the advanced higher, it is 14%. So 1 in 8, roughly 1 in 8, just over 1 in 8. In the English system, it's 1 in 10. So there is definitely, and it's been noted in research within the system itself, there is difficulties there, and that is that is something that's been highlighted in the report. Needs to be taken care and attention to it. How do we address this in society? In the results themselves, between the A and C grades within the Scottish Advanced Hires, the average there was 85% of females get an A to C in the Advanced Hires. In computer science, 90%, where the boys are coming up with 83. So again, just kind of figures to see where that's going. And that's across the jurisdictions where data was available, there were similar results. Girls were doing better in computer science. Here they're doing substantially better than the mean average across advanced hires. So they're doing very well. Participation by gender in Israel, which is a survey of 16 years, the average was 60-40. So it was 40% female, 60% male. Again, it is noted that a societal difference. What I was starting to allude to earlier on is how it transfers into society, where a recent Accenture survey was saying that there's participation in ICT by females in Europe is only 78%, where in Israel it's 37%. So it does feed through. The opportunity to be included, to take computer science, it does follow through in society very readily. And again, looking at it from a third level point of view, pathways to third level computing, the figures here, the more pronounced, are students, both male and female, that have taken computer science in upper second level. And the bars here are students, the lower bar, the green bar, is female students that don't. So again, it shows that the opportunity of taking it, it does follow through in participation and onwards into society itself. The assessment, I'm just looking at time, I'm going to keep moving along. The assessment each led to national qualification. Very important, goal-oriented society, the students, it had to lead to national qualification that they could lead on to go into third level if needs be. There was a combination of written exams and coursework itself. Again, it's different contexts between 80-20, 60-40. Again, that is sitting in the report. I'm sorry, the slides are not showing particularly well. So much so where in New Zealand it was 100% coursework, where in England it was 80% formal written work. Some of the examination boards are moving to digital exams as well for debugging. Quickly moving on, teacher professional development. Time is not my friend. The essential role of teachers is across all the papers and certainly research and talking to people in the area that the opportunity of students lies with the teachers, the ability of teachers to be supported in this endeavour, that the implementation and the ongoing support of computer science in the curriculum is critical that teachers are supported in, I suppose, the pedagogy, the content and the knowledge itself, the old term PCK. So the pre-service training was offered across the jurisdictions, so I believe movements are afoot within the Irish system the same. And very much the in-service training a lot of jurisdictions were revising their they had ICT systems or they had semi-computing curriculums as is. Some of us in England had 50,000 ICT teachers that needed to be assisted to help just to change the blend slightly of their skills. So how they addressed that was pretty much with the community's professional practice. Is how the teachers look for it. It's peer-to-peer learning. It was creating the training, the mentoring, the cascading in knowledge by peer-to-peer, be it online, in local hub groups, master teachers, teacher-led research, accreditation. So this is the computing at school model. I suppose looking at how it instantiates. Again, you have master teachers, you have teacher training provided. So you have a whole community practice based around all the different aspects that teachers can get involved in. So it's a very successful system. I suppose if you had an opportunity to look, maybe enjoy some mail lists, they're a very open group, very interested group to communicate and have dialogue with, and are leading some very good initiatives. Quickly moving on, in New Zealand, just to give you another idea of what teachers, this is a survey by Thompson and Bell, and they went back to survey the teachers and said, what do you value as a teacher? What supports would you look for when you're doing computer studies and digital technologies? And what they looked at was their community of practice, their online discussions, the Computer Science for High School program, which is teacher training, obviously provided by Google, local teacher organisational meetings, peer support, with colleague, and so on. But it was that peer-to-peer keep coming through, whether it's face-to-face or online, and developing and enhancing that community. So the summary of the findings, before I just move quickly on to Anna's, because we are very tight in time, there's strong rationale promoted for the adoption internationally. There's an extensive and largely agreed body of computer science content available. The assessment itself is a combination of written examination and coursework. Yes, there's implementation challenges, both from participation and gender point of view, and again, I suppose, and the challenges involved in bringing a new subject in, full stop. Central role of teachers as an enabler to make it happen. So for Anna, I suppose when we looked at this, the report that was produced in the timeline was the first step in putting the foundation in. So when they're looking at NCCA and the development group are looking at it, the course should equip to understand the fundamental principles and concepts of computer science, abstraction, logic, algorithms, and data representation. Computational thinking, repeated practical experience of writing computer programs to solve such problems. Design and produce solutions, models, artifacts, evaluate their own and their others' computational work. Responsible, competent and creative users of technology. So again, the wider report, obviously I'm just giving the main findings, we're showing this as the critical aspects across the jurisdictions that were coming very clearly out. The international recognition of the benefits, the rationale. So I've gone through this economic, educational, social and cultural benefits, the importance of that, the importance of computational in the 21st digital world for students and for society and for all stakeholders. So the specification itself, systematic representation of content described as learning outcomes. So again, nothing new, I suppose, to the educational here, the use of learning outcomes. Specify students should be able to do rather than what they should know. So it's about doing and understanding. The flexibility of teaching and learning approaches that can be built in, and key skills embedded in the learning outcomes. So these key skills. Part of the curriculum development is that balancing approach between skills and knowledge, the importance of that. So the strength that the subject matter would have in knowledge, but equally the key skills, and how you balance those two. Having a critical disposition and an ethical framework from within decisions and choices are made. It's the importance of that balance, maintaining balance. So the key skills, mapping the key skills from computer science and how it relates to the key skills framework, looking at how specification will develop and the ideas around where it's going, project management, different methodologies, user-centered design, UCL, HCL, teamwork and collaboration, to investigate, design, develop programming and modeling, communications, presentation, data representation. So the idea here is that computer science as a subject allows a student to encounter and to actually participate in the key skills framework that was developed. And it maps very, very well onto those key skills. The timeline, just like with its presentation, is very, very tight. The Minister has brought it forward to 2018, September. So the publication was last 2 months ago now, in February, as it is available on the NCCA website. The consultation event in shaping computer science happened in Dublin Castle a couple of weeks ago. The finalisation of the briefing paper established in the development group is development group's meeting next week. And they will start over the course of around 5 meetings drafting the specification. I say coming from the findings, there is a lot of consensus of what a computer science curriculum looks like, the specification. Now it's that balancing within the key skill framework. It's balancing to contextualise it to the Irish system. June, draft specification of board and council approved for consultation. June, September, consultation on specification. November, it's all happening so fast, and it's November, draft specification discussion of board and council, and then December, specification approved for council and issued to DES and DES. It is very, very fast. But again, from the study and the report of jurisdictions, the same happened in New Zealand. When the opportunity was there and the stakeholders and the moons were in alignment, there was a tendency to go and to take the opportunity. And so much so in Christchurch with the earthquakes, they still went ahead and did implementation. They did 3-day seminars in computer science, and they went with it. So there is that speed of implementation, but thankfully there's a lot of work done internationally on computer science. There's a lot of learning speed to be gained from that, and learnings to be applied to the Irish situation. So thank you for your attention. If there's any questions, Anna will take them on the phone if so be it. I'm happy to give me out your mobile number. I didn't put it up there, but certainly we can continue the conversation, Twitter, or again, Anna asked me to put our email address up there as well if you have any questions. Or certainly I'm happy. I do know we're tight in time. Okay, thank you.
The only thing that stands between coffee and if there's any questions you might want to ask.
Perfect time.
Do you have a quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah, just 2 questions. One, why is Israel so good at this? And 2, in coursework, how do they check for plagiarism when they stand as a programmer?
Good. 2 very good questions. One is, and they came up in a couple of weeks back. The Israeli situation does have a different context, both socially and historically. There is military service for both genders, so maybe we introduce that might resolve something. Well, I'm not proposing that by any stretch, but it is a challenge. And I suppose there is an element where the Israeli system's longer. They're actually in the 70s they had started, and they did the revision in 1998. So they're the figures we're looking at. So they have many years ahead. And again, I do know that they're societal, and it is a very different society in many respects. In relation to plagiarism and how that is dealt with, I don't have that answer. I won't pretend to have that answer or start bluffing around it now. I know from my own teaching experience, and I set a lot of projects, major project work, milestone projects, internal level groups, and online. It comes back to the educator, a lot of it, who you'll spot patterns very, very quickly. And it's that learning, and there's new technology, looking at some of the work going on with Git repositories and APIs, and you have to do checks within that, and artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of solutions coming through. But yeah, that's another challenge. Yeah, indeed. Yep. It's I couldn't answer that. And again, Anna would probably be best to answer that. My job was the research. I led the research on that. So again, I would suggest to email away and not give you a short answer. Okay. Okay, thank you. Talk nice and fast. That was a 2-hour presentation in overtime. Thanks. How you getting on? Yeah, of course. Yes. So it is a section. It is. If you actually look at the short course and look at how that is divided up, networking, short course, this computing, yeah, it's short course. It certainly seems to reflect it. Like even when you look at the A level, the E2A. And look at that structure. Now, I looked at it and I'm probably turn level. Wow, imagine if you had students like that coming into your turn level, we know hair left in your hair. But physical computing, yes, it's very much, it's an essential, it really is. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Neil.
All right, thanks.
Well done. Well done.
Jeez, I know the timing part, I'm out the other end.
No worries. Thanks for asking some questions. Good to see you, Chair.
But we need these kind of discussions.
She initially got me when I was interviewing the chief. They check it. Are you there?
Well, you're streaming. Thank you very much for coming to do this. So this will be a debate.
So unfortunately, we're dealing with the first battle. It is get out there. There's a brilliant conversation going on there. I think it's very exciting. And what's very good for me is on the right side of history. I do understand. You're
she was ex-military. She wrote a complete program and she was now moving back to teaching and working in schools.
We do software engineering there now. We do cyber warfare as their specialist scheme as a it's an extraordinary. I find it absolutely.
That might be a good course to talk about.
That's an idea. That's an idea now. Honestly, well.
Are you going to get a copy?
Yeah. Let's see. It was a bit of a surprise after the whole thing. Kind of poor old Anna didn't get her stuff and get much looking. But then again, when you're speaking to the slide, you can.
But there's also quite a people that need just that skeleton for sort of people.
Oh, you're after us, yeah.
Now, we know.
We got 2 lots of reaction to all the HP.
Are they happy talking to this? There's no rubbing on.
converter? Oh yeah. Sinead, there's the motor. You're right. Oh, has everybody got that? Oh, no. Oh, yes. Okay. You're very welcome. How are you? Oh, did you ever VJ?
Oh, they were VJ.
Right, okay. Thank you. Do you want us to stick yours up? Or no?
It doesn't get working first.
Right, trying to find your hours in. It is actually, yeah, we were saying
Tea or coffee? Whatever. I have one of each. What prefer do you want? Okay, you take that. Go on. Go ahead and you want. You sure you're stuck with coffee now or not? Oh, yeah. Good job. Cup of tea.
everyone. You're very welcome. I'd just like to introduce Siobhan O'Sullivan and Sinead O'Sullivan from PDST. PDST has always been a great supporter of CESI, and we really appreciate the girls being here today. Their talk today is on digital citizenship. It's part of a new course from the PDST. It's getting fantastic reaction in education centres, so we're in for a real treat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Jo, and you're all very welcome here today. I suppose on behalf of Sinead and I would just like to say that we have trained fine ICT tutors for every education centre throughout the country, and the digital citizenship course that we have condensed down into 25 minutes for you is actually a 4 to 5 hour course run over 2 consecutive weeks. So if you would be interested in that, either in your schools or attending it yourself, please feel free to contact Sinead or myself, either through Twitter, or our email addresses are Siobhan O'Sullivan and Sinead O'Sullivan at pdst.ie. We're not related. We would be delighted to come into your schools and give a 2 hour version, a 4 hour version, or indeed you could have it run through your local education centre. So without further ado, what we're going to hope to cover with you over the next 20 minutes or so is looking at digital citizenship online and in the classroom, identifying safe sources of information for students. So the temptation for most people is to go straight to Google, and as many of you know, Google is 19 years old this year, so every student that we teach has never encountered a world without Google. So we'll look at some alternatives to that, being ethical online and managing myself and saying safe online. Just to mention the digital strategy and a couple of quotes from the strategy, that students and schools should promote schools should promote the autonomous, effective and safer use of the internet by young people, and also that schools would constantly review their practices when it comes to, and their policies when it comes to the use of online and internet use. Okay, so to kick us off, we're going to ask you to go to menti.com, and the code is live on the screen right now. So it's 496405. And we're going to ask you, what is your understanding of the term digital citizenship? And just while you are getting onto menti.com, just to say that because we're limited to 20 minutes, we are making this very much a presentation. This is the only little bit about interactivity, and it's really killing us because the whole 4 hour course is completely interactive, and so this is just a real change for us and not representative of the digital citizenship course that's running in education centres. The other thing to say to you as well, you may have seen it on the first couple of slides, that we have all the slides here live on the PDST website. So if you go to pdst.ie/CESI 2017, you'll be able to access all the slides. Okay, whoever has said avoiding alternative facts, I like them already, because that's we've even updated the course since it was designed. We did another course recently on developing digital competencies, and we have a whole section in there on alternative facts. Okay, so it's great to see what everybody is coming up with there. And what we're going to do now, I'm going to hand over to Sinead. We'll click back to this at the end, but I'm going to hand over to Sinead, and she's going to talk you through what the students tend to come up with. Okay.
So I suppose myself, I have been exploring digital citizenship with my students for the last 3 or 4 years, and I suppose it kind of evolved as it's come along. So this would be, I suppose, where I always started with was getting students to think, well, what is a digital citizen and what does it mean? Because in CSP, they're looking at what it means to be a citizen, but of a community. So what does it mean to be a citizen of an online community? A lot of the rules that apply to being a citizen of our current community apply online as well. So the first thing that I would have always done with students was to encourage them to get think about what it means to be a digital citizen and what are the kind of the rights and responsibilities that come with that, and develop a digital citizenship charter that we would agree with at the start. So this is just one, I mean, this is the first year of work. It's not that it's fantastic or anything, but it's just one idea that they would have come up with. We then, I suppose we're suggesting ways that you can do this with your students. One of them is Adobe Spark, which has really developed some features recently, and we actually put together our own little short. It's 40 seconds of a video on a digital citizenship pledge, so we're just going to play it here now.
And of course, Mary Jo and Ciara are running a 1-hour session on Adobe Spark later on today, so if any of you are interested in attending that session, but it's a really, really simple platform for creating videos.
Don't forget the human behind the screen. Remember that all internet users are real human beings with feelings, so don't say anything online that you wouldn't say to someone's face. Think before you type and send. Don't be a bystander. Stand up to silence. When we use others' work. Protect your
own and others' private information online.
Okay, so that's just one idea about how to, I suppose, get started exploring digital citizenship with students. We also found this on Common Sense Media, and I suppose I would have been working with my students pre-Adobe Spark, so this is one of the things I would have used with them. It's just a template, and it was one of the templates that I used when I was working with my students, and they went along and they made their own one. They made a digital version, and they actually made a handwritten version as well that we put up in the classroom. So we just, at the side there, put some suggestions on how you can create your own digital poster. There's Canva, picture chart, and a couple of those. So, and as we said, all these slides are on the PDST website. Okay, so identifying safe sources of information. This is one, if any of you have ever attended one of our workshops, you'll probably be familiar with this one. And I suppose it's the idea that sometimes if there's a picture with something, we tend to nearly give it more credibility, because if there's a picture with it, it has to be true. But it's the idea, I suppose, that we have to get our students to stop and think about what they're looking at and go, well, actually, does this make sense? And thinking about developing critical literacy, which was mentioned in one of the talks that we were just at in this room before the coffee break. So I suppose obviously Abraham Lincoln was a visionary leader, but I doubt even he could have predicted the power of the internet. So this is one, and Siobhan's just going to pull it up here. It's a website we came across, and I suppose again it's one that can be used with students to tease out with them when you can't believe everything that you read online. So we can go here to Christopher Columbus, and if we start reading about him, you know, born in 1951 in Sydney, Australia, but you know, there's a whole load of inaccuracies in there. But if you actually notice, it goes back. So even though he was born in 1951, he actually set sail on his voyage in 1942. So even if the students didn't know anything about Christopher Columbus, if they could engage their brains and notice a little bit, they would say, well, how could he have set off on something before he was even born? And it works backwards like that. We'd also encourage them to check out the About section of the website, and it's a really nice website to highlight how you can't believe everything that you read on the internet, and that we need to think critically and to look for key areas. And in the workshops that we've designed, we go into a lot more detail about how to look at websites and how to critically evaluate the information that our students are seeing online. Okay. So Siobhan's going to take you through the next section.
Okay, so we were talking about fake news and I suppose alternative facts. We've had a lot of rich source of material over the last number of weeks and months. So here we just broke down some different types of fake news, things like clickbait, satire, misleading and out of context information, propaganda, and so on. And as I say, the daily news is a rich source of examples for this at the moment. And here's one such example from about a year ago in Ireland, where we're all familiar with the Waterford Whispers news, but unfortunately some people in Germany are not familiar with the fact that it's a satirical website. So we're also familiar with the fact that Lidl always only has 1 or 2 checkouts open. So what has happened here is that Waterford Whispers and the article dozens injured in stampede after second checkout opens, but Focus, which is a trusted German news site, actually felt this hook, line and sinker. Okay, so if there's any German teachers here, you might translate what this is, but I believe that it roughly translates into what was on the Waterford Whispers article. So I suppose, we came across this quote recently: sharing illogical things begins to erode your credibility and make you look foolish. How many of us think that we retweet things automatically without necessarily reading the article and checking the veracity and the facts and so on behind it? And just bringing in some ethical use of images here, we looked for an image online for shame, and we come up with something like this, but we couldn't have the copyright to use it. So I said to Sinead, stick your head down on the laptop quick there, and I took a picture of her and put with my iPhone and put a black and white filter over it. So even just teaching your students, if you can't find an image you want online, recreate it. So thanks to my lovely model here, okay? Clickbait, you're probably familiar with if you're not familiar with the term, you're familiar with the concept. We took this from the Irish Independent. You'll never guess why. What we found was shocking. You won't believe what happened next. Look at these child actors from the 70s and 80s. You won't believe what they look like now. It's purely to get people to click on and to drive advertising revenues, okay? But sometimes students and indeed some adults fall for it. And what we would suggest instead is that you would fact check information. Snopes would be a really good fact-checking website, and another website we'd love to draw your attention to is perspexnews.com. It used to be simply an iOS and an Android app, but there is now a full website for this. And the way Perspex works is it will help students develop their own critical thinking skills, because it looks at 3 perspectives for every article. A kind of baseline viewpoint, one that agrees, and then one that disagrees with each one. Okay, so again, all those images are hyperlinked. So when you go to our presentation online, you can click out on those and access the websites. This is something that I tweeted out recently, and it got something like 6,000 or 7,000 hits on Twitter. I was absolutely blown away by how many people retweeted it and favorited it. But it's just a nice cheat sheet that we would recommend you would print out in your classroom, and it would support students developing their own critical thinking skills and not necessarily accepting someone else's narrative and what they see online, okay? Just in terms of some other alternatives, instead of going straight to Google, if they could go to World Book Online, this is freely available in every home, in every school, in every classroom in Ireland. And there's differentiated levels within World Book. So you've got the early world of learning, kids, which is aimed at primary, student and advanced, aimed at junior and senior cycle respectively. And within early world of learning, you can see a lot of the nice features that are there. Read aloud for students who have difficulty reading or encoding. Built-in dictionaries, if students double click on any word, it will define the word for them. There's also a lot of resources for teachers, as you can see. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Sinead now to look at some more ethics and use of images.
We're coming back to the use of images, and as Siobhan referred to earlier, we can create our own images sometimes if we don't find the one, or if we don't have permission to use the one on the website, or online if we find them. So copyright is becoming a huge issue, and there are several schools around the country who have received cease and desist letters from companies such as Getty Images, and they've ignored them and they've been fined for using images. I know one school who literally just a student used an image of a question mark, and it was just as part of a business project, and it wasn't, they didn't think anything of it, but they were sent a letter to cease and desist, and a small fine was imparted.
And
so
So I can see some worried looking faces, that's why I'm laughing here. So it's just the message is.
And we're not trying to scaremonger, but it is important to be aware of it, because I didn't know is not an excuse, and it won't be accepted as an excuse. So it's becoming a lot of bigger issues. So we just go back there for a second just to say that copyright should be included in your acceptable use policy, and I'm sure most of you have an acceptable use policy in your school already. If you don't, or if you want to update one, Webb-wise have an acceptable use policy generator, which is a really, really fantastic tool, and we have a link to it in there. So it helps you generate your own acceptable use, and it takes you through the steps and gives you examples. Yes?
And this is, I use that generator,
Oh, yes.
got right to the end, had the whole policy done, and when you hit to generate it,
yeah,
it's gone.
Okay.
3 times I entered the agency.
Okay, we might look into that.
And I called and asked to follow it. It just disappeared, and I couldn't find it on the desktop or saver.
Okay. If you maybe speak to us at the end,
Sure.
we'll get your details and speak to our colleagues in Webwise about that. Thank you.
Okay. So Google Images, great place to search. Probably a lot of people, their default place to search. But do we have permission to use the images that we find there? So Siobhan's just typing in there looking for an image, and a whole series of images come up, and you just type it in without putting in any of the filters. But if you see what she's doing there, she's going into Tools, and Usage Rights, and if you go down to Label for Non-Commercial Use, because most of the stuff that we're using in schools is for non-commercial use, we're not going to be making a profit from it. But if you go under that filter, you notice that an awful lot of the really nice images disappear. So we need to be sure that the images we're using, we have permission for. So in our presentation, we're just going to suggest two, we're not going to go into them, but the links are in there. So one of them, an alternative search, is photos for class, and it is exactly what it says in the tin. It's photos that are up there that are every school has permission to use for a classroom. And Pixabay is another one. So in your own time, feel free to go in and explore those two. And the nice thing about Photos for Class is when you download the image, the credit comes with it, because it's always good practice to credit your sources and say where you got them from.
Just one more caution with Pixabay, the images that you get on it are excellent, but the first row of images are sponsored, and it's sponsored content, so just ignore the first row and go to any of the others.
And just to make the point, the copyright isn't just for images. I know we're focusing on images, but it also includes intellectual property, what people write, and music as well. So in the last couple of months, YouTube have actually added a new feature onto their account. Now you have to be logged in to use it, but it's Creator Studio, where they are starting to generate a whole load of free music and free sounds as well. Because I know when I would have been making movies and projects with my own students in school, sometimes you'd want a sound and you'd find it hard to find. There are a load of different types of sounds in there as well. So you can see here some of the free music, and you can see that there's sound effects as well. And again, how to get in there, that's all in our presentation as well, if you want to check it out. Okay. And they're free to download. So I suppose managing myself, staying safe online, again, kind of ties into one of the key skills. And I mean, this was in the Irish Times a little while ago. It's based on the Net Children Go Mobile report from 2015. So we're not going to go through all that stats there, but if you look at the one with the Twitter there, 9 out of 10 15 to 16-year-olds in Ireland have a social networking profile. So if they do, then they need to know how to handle it, how to behave responsibly, and a lot of them don't, and they don't realise it and they can't handle it. So it's very important. So we're going to just watch this very quickly.
tegen Antwerpen.
Ja.
Insecten.
Dat blieft?
Ik voel 2 insecten op je rug. Kan dat?
Ja, vlinders.
Slovenie?
Ja.
Een moto. Oranje. Pats erop. Zenit.
Oui, bien.
Je hebt een vriendin. Julie de...
Ja.
Een boeiend liefdesleven. 3, 4 zelfs.
De vierde, daar zwijg ik meestal over, dus dat weten niet veel mensen.
Hoe is mijn spierscheur? Maison rouge, balkon, blanc. Ja. Ik zie geld, ik zie transacties, maar kent je rekeningnummer van buiten? Ik denk dat ik het wel weet. Die staat wel negatief op je bankrekening.
Ja?
9-7. Last month, you spent €200 on alcohol. Vorige maand €300 aan kleding gespendeerd. 8.
Ja.
5. Voor een huis dat van eigenaar gaat veranderen. €795.000.
Ja, maar eigenlijk.
41.
Ja.
Is dat juist?
Ja, dat is juist. Oh my god. Oh man. Ah, dat is video eng.
That video is a couple of years old now, so some of you may have seen it already. It's one I would have used with my own students to kind of introduce the idea that what you do online, you have to be very, very careful. So that leads us on to how secure is my password.
Okay, and I can see some very, very worried looking faces because we were playing that video there. And I suppose you might wonder, well, how did they get the bank information? If your password is easy to guess, then it's very easy for, and how many of you are using the same password for multiple sites? Okay, that's another issue. So this is a site that I came across at an ICT conference a number of years ago, and we were asked to input our passwords, and some of them could be cracked instantly. So we all know things like FEN, password 123, and so on. I think ours were, well, mine was 158,000 years it would take to crack, so I'm fairly confident. If yours was how long?
4 days.
4 days.
So yeah.
Can I just comment on the advisability of putting your genuine password into a website like that?
Yeah, they
Might be
actually
worth using it as a tool to explore varieties of passwords rather than
Yes.
your genuine.
Yes, exactly. But they have something in there that says, did you really put your real password in? How did you know that we weren't going to? So they kind of disclose that as well. But I suppose, you know, a lot of what those people had online was through social media. And everything that we put on social media, even if we don't share it ourselves, our friends may share it for us.
So they're just the characteristics of digital content and social media. I'm not even going to talk through them now because I know we're running short on time. We got them from Webwise. So your digital footprint, and we just liked this image here because I suppose it's the idea that as we look towards the future, your digital footprint will kind of, it's your interaction with the world and it's what you're leaving behind after you, and we need to raise awareness of that with our students. So we love this idea, you know, nobody knows you're a dog. You don't know. And again, students, they don't know who they're talking to. And I often have this conversation with my students, how many friends do you have on Facebook or whatever, or who's following you on Instagram? And most of the people that they're friends with or that are following them, they haven't a clue who they are, really. They've never actually met them in person. So they could be anybody. More likely not a dog, but it could be something else. So coming back to Webwise and being aware of what they're posting online, Webwise have developed this suite of videos. It's 3 videos and lesson plans to use. It's called the Lockers Resource. It's well worth checking out. This Forever video has got great accolades worldwide, in fact. The Australian police have been using it as an example of going into schools to raise awareness around, you know, be careful what you're sharing with people online, even if they are your boyfriends or your trusted friends or your girlfriends, because they only have to share it with one other person, and it gets out of control. So it's a very powerful video, and we highly recommend checking it out and watching it. And again, this is Common Sense Media, great website. I find it really useful. It covers everything digital citizenship-wise, but this is another poster that could possibly be printed out, and it's literally a roadmap of questions for students. You know, if I took a photo of my friend, now what do I do? And it's very yes, no, and they have to work their way down along, and it's something, you know, you stop to think about this before you share a photograph with somebody or before you share a photograph of yourself. And this is another one that my students would come up with when we were looking at safety and staying safe online. So this was kind of suggestions that advice they were giving to each other and themselves as well. And I suppose, very quick snapshot of the digital skills. We've pretty much covered all of them here today in the 25 minutes. Screen time management, I suppose, is the one that we haven't mentioned that much, but every other one of them we've kind of hit at in the 25 minutes. And as we said before, this is a big course.
And so just to finish off, just to say that if you are interested in hearing more about this, please contact your local education centre for face-to-face training, and there is also free online CPD on teachercpd.ie. I suppose the two that would be most relevant to what we've just explored with you would be safer internet use in the classroom and social media and web-wise teachers. Thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes, sorry.
Just while the girls are putting it up, I just had to say thank you to Siobhan and Sinead. That was really, really interesting. A lot of food for thought there, and it really makes you become more aware of the dangers and how careful we should be online. Thanks, sir.
And you may even, I suppose, reflecting on what you put up at the start of the session, you may think, well, actually, I need to expand on that a little bit, or maybe in that I get it online.
And we will tweet out the responses from the Mentimeter, okay? So you can access them online as well. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, bye.
Here. Oh. Good. So red is on, is it? Okay. Dermot Walsh. Hey, Dermot. It's going good.
I presume that's all you want.
All right. Oh, well. No. Okay.
Because you're going to hit.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's see. I'll just set up here. Okay. So people sometimes do want to ask about it.
Good afternoon. The title of this session is Fit for Purpose ICT Infrastructure in Schools. The presenter is Tom Lonergan, and Tom Lonergan is the Technology Coordinator in the PDST Technology and Education, where he advises schools on fit-for-purpose technologies to support learning. Tom also coordinates the school's broadband programme on behalf of the PDST Technology and Education in collaboration with the Department of Education and Skills and the HEA-Net. Big welcome for Tom, please.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be back with CESI again. So, we've got about half an hour, so I will try to kind of zoom through a couple of ideas on ICT infrastructure. So I've been working in the area for about 14 years. I came to work in NCT in 2002, and before that I was working in industry with different telecoms companies, IT companies and whatnot. I'll just maybe point this over here to me a little bit. Okay, so today I'm just going to cover a couple of things. So the session overview in terms of, I'm obviously very aware, every school is different. Every school I talk to is different, and the different in terms of culture, capacity, support, the staff, you know, where they've come from, where they're at, whether they're a new school, a no school, rural, urban, you name it. And the purpose of ICT infrastructure, you'll hear me saying fit for purpose a lot. So the purpose of ICT infrastructure is to support the chosen model of teaching, learning, assessment, and whatever else goes on in school. So if it doesn't do that, then it's not serving its purpose correctly. So technology should always be following the purpose, and every school has its own view as to what that purpose is. And when I say chosen model, I'm very conscious that schools have different chosen models, be it primary, post-primary, just the whole orientation that the school wants to go. I want to focus on fit-for-purpose technologies, a little bit about planning, selecting, procuring, implementing and supporting technologies, and they're the kind of technologies that we're going to be talking about a little. So, what are some key questions that every school should be asking themselves, I guess, on an ongoing basis? What are our teaching and learning objectives? What technologies can help to achieve those? What approach will fit my school and my staff? So again, I talk to schools every day. Well, 5 days a week anyway, sometimes 6 days a week or whatever. Every school with its own staff. I talked to some schools recently who are like new build schools. They've got first years, they might have second years, they might have third years. Other schools have, been around a long time. So, it's certainly very difficult for a school who's been around a long time to kind of shift from A to B quickly. Whereas maybe a school that comes in that has a new build maybe, or might be in a temporary building, and just has first years, that's a little bit easier. Or can be a little bit easier. Obviously they've got lots of other challenges as well. And every staff is different. So some people would say to me, what device should we get? And I'm saying, I don't know your staff. Like, have you talked to your staff? What will work for your staff? Will it be a Microsoft? Will it be an Apple? Will it be a Google device? Will it be something else? And that's just on the device front. So very much every school is different. In terms of the digital strategy, the 5-year digital strategy, obviously schools have some funding, have received some funding, or pretty well all the schools have received some funding, except sometimes new schools and new build programs, because they got the money in the new build program, they didn't get it in the grant. But, so what are the priorities and stages? So you're not going to achieve everything in one go with whatever amount of money you've got. So you've got to maybe think in terms of more strategically. What are the priorities, the immediate priorities? And seeing that the grants haven't been, these are the first grants to arrive in quite a while, I'm from talking to schools, I know that schools, will be fixing things, projectors maybe, might have dimmed over the years, let's say, and need to be replaced, or lamp units replaced, or whatever. So every school has its own set of priorities and stages. And then what advice and support is available, I'll talk a little bit about that. This is our website, the PDST Technology and Education website. And so this technology area here, that's kind of generally the area I kind of look after. And down the left-hand side then, the main headings there would be grant information, because it's, the grant has been announced in January. Purchasing frameworks, we'll talk a little bit about those. An overview of technology in the school, computing devices, tablets, Wi-Fi, networking, cloud-based tools and applications, presenting in the classroom, which would be like presenting, projectors, screens, that kind of stuff. And in other areas, like there's other ICT, schools broadband, web hosting, tech support, and other ICT areas. So I've kind of split it into, you'll see those kind of areas coming up again and again, because when I think about ICT infrastructure, I think about it in this kind of model here. So, and some of that infrastructure is connecting the school to somewhere else. So that broadband connection there in the middle. So for post-primary, it's 100 megabits per second. For primary, it varies. It can be a slower technology, or in some cases, it's pretty faster technology. So if you're lucky enough to have a cable connection from the school's broadband program, it can be up to 150 megs or more. If you've got e-fiber and you're out the country or you're in a town or whatever, it can be everything from maybe 15, 20 megs to up to 100 megs as well. And then that links you to cloud-based applications. So obviously the better your connection, the more you can link out to the cloud-based applications. Within the school then, you've got a network, possibly a wireless network. You've got teachers and student devices, and then you've got presentation technology, so projectors, interactive whiteboards. You may be doing some stuff like screen mirroring, so if I have a tablet here, I might be, whatever I'd be on my tablet might be screen mirrored up to the big screen. And interactive flat screens have kind of come into the equation recently, so here we're using projectors, we're using a large screen. If you were I was thinking, when I came in first, I thought it was an interactive flat panel, and I was thinking, to purchase an interactive flat panel that size would probably cost about 30 grand or whatever. So, and fit for purpose, very important. Okay, so in terms of planning, there are, and in terms of, oops, hold on, let's go back here. Where am I? Here we go, sorry. In terms of planning, there are some contextual documents and programs and whatever initiatives that you're quite well aware of. So, for example, that is the digital strategy, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah. This is school self-evaluation. This is a document we brought out in 2008 on a kind of a process. It's called Planning and E-Learning in Your School when we were the NCTE. And this is the quality framework, which most schools are aware of as well. So, in terms of planning, we're generally kind of looking at going from A to B. We're generally talking about improving the infrastructure. Now, as I said, because you've only got a certain amount of funds and a certain amount of time and whatever, you won't be able to do everything overnight. If you are, you're a genius. And so I would suggest maybe identify an area for improvement. So that might be devices, it might be projectors, it might be the network is squeaking, the Wi-Fi is not working, whatever. And you've got quite a choice there in most schools. And then plan how that area could be improved, implement the changes, review them, and then see if you have any money left and if you can do it again, or you have to redo it, or modify it, or tweak it, or whatever. So it's really about applying that model to whatever your infrastructure is. Okay, just a couple of things in terms of trends over the last number of years. So, like if you look at stuff like Horizon reports and different trends on technology, you'll see some of these. I mean, you'll see lots of other stuff as well. But I'm talking about fairly basic, the basic everyday technology we use in school. So, in terms of computing devices, we're talking about a movement from, my thumb is a bit jumpy today. Let's see. So, in terms of moving from desktops to laptops, laptop trolleys, tablets, hybrids, phones, and so that is kind of a movement that has happened over the last couple of years. Schools share devices to personal devices on BYOD. So I was in a school the other day. They're allowing their students to bring in their own devices. In their case, it was mobile phones, and they were doing a lot of work with that. And in terms of device funding, where schools would always have provided all the technology, including all the devices, not just the network, not just the Wi-Fi, but basically would have provided the devices as well. And there would be no other devices allowed into school. Some schools still operate that mode, but other schools have gone the way of allowing kids to bring in those devices. And that's the parent-funded model, or whoever is funding that particular device. Presenting in the classroom, so we've had a trend change from long throw projectors. Now these are long throw projectors, but they're still obviously very fit for purpose in terms of, they're not getting in anybody's eye, in the way of your eyes or anything like that. In a classroom, the ceiling would be lower, and you don't typically, as a teacher, want to be looking into that beam every day. It's not good. So long throw projectors, short throw projectors, interactive projectors, high definition projectors, interactive flat screens, and presenting from anywhere. So being able to mirror what you're doing on a tablet or a mobile device onto the screen. In terms of network, we're talking about generally a trend move from shift to mobile, or fixed to Wi-Fi, and from servers. A lot of schools would be asking about, do I need a server? Should I upgrade my server, or can I move to the cloud? And that's a really important question for a lot of schools. Some schools that don't have a server, if you're thinking of buying a server, you really need to ask yourself why. Or can I get that service that might be on the server someplace else? In a lot of cases, I think you can. Okay, just a little bit about the school's broadband program and service desk. Just for anybody who doesn't know, we call the school's broadband service desk. That's our 1-800 number, and that's our email address. The two diagrams, or whatever, graphs on the right-hand side, this is a primary school. It's on e-fibre, and it goes up. And you can see its usage varies. This is back the last couple of weeks. Usage varies, depending on what they're doing, whatever. It goes up to about 20-something megs up here. The one down below is a 100 meg school, so it has a better connection. And the green is the download. The blue underneath the line is the upload. So you can see, and we can see over the last number of years, like when we look at broadband connections, we can see the upload tends to be, it was negligible before, but now people are actually uploading stuff and whatnot. So just a couple of things in terms of broadband. We have 6 levels of content filtering, so levels 1 to 6, and that any school would select which level they want. But within a school, you can have 2 levels within a school. And for example, the school could say, I want 1 level for staff and another level for students. Are there any schools here who are using 2 levels of content filtering? Okay, is it useful? Okay, good. And how is it useful?
Well, the teachers can get access to stuff that we don't want the kids to have access to.
Okay. Good. Sometimes when schools ask us about this, I say to them, make sure you actually get it right. You have to map your network onto it, otherwise the kids will have access to stuff that the staff won't. So that will be a bit of fun for all that. Also, this is more a technical thing, but our broadband connection has an integrated firewall. And what does that mean? It means we filter a lot of malware, viruses, bad stuff, where we can, and we use a very good tool for doing that. So we've actually got a centralized firewall for all the schools coming into it. So that kind of takes away a lot of problems that you don't need to have in your school. But sometimes IT providers, and I've come from the IT industry, basically try and sell schools other firewalls, which they don't need, right? Now, you might need a basic firewall to do segment your network and stuff like that. This is more technical stuff, but if you're a principal or whatever, or if you are a principal and the school is telling you need to buy a really expensive firewall, you might want to contact us and maybe send me an email. I'll give you my email address and maybe we'll have a chat or whatever. Okay? And the other thing is remote technical support. I'm going to talk about technical support a little bit, but every provider who is providing support to your school should have a remote connection into your school. And that's a validated connection. So we route it through our broadband desk, our broadband system. And basically, we actually, by IP address, so we know it's not just anybody coming into your network, because you don't want that, it's secure and whatever, and it's validated by the school. So the school says, I'm allowing this company to actually dial into my network to do so. That helps with remote. That helps with keeping the cost of tech support down, or it certainly should. In terms of Wi-Fi is, well, first of all, schools are the most demanding environment for Wi-Fi. And not everyone agrees with that, but I'm absolutely convinced of it, because schools have, and I'm talking about a school now with lots of devices, right? So you've got teacher devices, student devices, whatever. Now, where else do you get, with a school who has like a couple hundred devices, where else do you get that density of people moving around? You don't get it in offices, because a lot of people are sitting in their desks. You don't get it in warehouses. You don't get it in Croke Park. You don't get it in BB Stadium. You get lots of people with devices. I can tell you they won't be getting much Wi-Fi. And they'll be moving around every class period and whatnot. So the network and Wi-Fi is the single most critical aspect of ICT in your school. Why is that? Because if it goes down, it affects everybody. If the projector goes in classroom number 10, okay, it's pretty disastrous for classroom number 10. Or if that laptop, whatever, fails, yes, it's pretty disastrous for that particular teacher or whatever, or that situation. But if the network goes down, or the broadband goes down, you know, it's back to, well, obviously you can teach, you can have teaching and learning without it, but it's pretty critical. It is vital that you select suitable Wi-Fi products and suppliers. And there's a lot of debate about this on CESI and off CESI and between schools and all, lots of different forums about what is good Wi-Fi, what is fit-for-purpose Wi-Fi. So I went out to tender a couple of years ago now to set up a Wi-Fi framework, right? And so we had a lot of different submissions from different companies, and we selected 7 companies to go on the framework. We didn't feel the others were fit for purpose. Now, not every company or every product that gets mentioned everywhere actually applied. So some people never applied to be on the framework, so they couldn't be. If you don't buy that lotto ticket, then you can't win the lotto. So products, Wi-Fi product is extremely important to have the right Wi-Fi product, but having the right supplier is also almost equally important. If you've got the wrong product, even with the right supplier, sometimes it's not possible to fix it, right? And I've talked to a couple of schools recently, post-primary schools with 500, 600, 700 devices, and they called me and they said, Tom, I'm not sure, I think we have a problem. Is it the broadband? And we checked the broadband, sorry, it's not the broadband. Okay, we've got to look a bit deeper. So maybe it's the network, right? So no, we've had some people in and they say it's fine, and I'm saying, well, it's not the broadband, it's got to be somewhere in the network, right? So it's typically the Wi-Fi, right? And maybe the Wi-Fi product is okay, or maybe it's not. And when I say okay, I mean fit for purpose, right? And the framework is pretty recent, so I'm from a telecoms background, so I spent a lot of time looking at different products, looking at the kind of products that were fit for purpose for schools, for the most demanding environment out there. And therefore, I set a pretty high bar, right? And so I'm confident in the products we have on the framework. So it's a difficult situation for a school, and I'll talk about it a little bit more if I have time. Each school is different: new schools, existing schools, size of school, layout. And if this is the layout, sorry about that. If this is the layout of the school, you might decide, look, I've only got 10 grand or 5 grand or whatever it is to spend, so I can't put Wi-Fi everywhere, right? So maybe, where do I put it? So you could actually have a situation where you could have a bunch of laptops on a trolley and take the Wi-Fi around with them and plug in. That's kind of basic entry-level Wi-Fi, right? Or you could buy maybe, okay, we'll put it in the staff room, and we'll put it in section A up here, or this wing of the building and whatnot. So a phased approach is possible. And as I said, we have a Wi-Fi framework. Just talking about a little bit about tablets and devices, and only focusing on some of the newer ones, right? So, okay, well, newer as in mobile devices, I guess. I'm not going to talk about desktops because we all know what they are, and traditional laptops. So you've got Apple, you've got Google, Android and Chromebook. You've got Windows with Surface, and you've got some hybrids, some interesting hybrids. So there's lots of them out there. We can spend all day talking about devices, and we all have our own choices. We like small screens, portable, touch screens, whatever. And so there's great choice out there for learning. In terms of cloud services, look, it's a given. Cloud services are absolutely fantastic if you have the connectivity to reach them, right? So I'm a big fan of cloud. And if I had a choice in a school, I would be using cloud services always in preference to a local server, almost always, right? Where I could find the service in the cloud, I would not buy a local server to do it. Instead, I'd go with a cloud server. Because of flexibility, diversity, number of applications, access, ease of access, it's much more scalable. You can try it before you buy, low risk, and there's lots of different cost models available, and lots of choice. So even if I'm using a cloud service that I think is absolutely fantastic, or you're a teacher and you're using it, and then you find, actually, it's not quite as good as I thought. It's great. Initially it was fabulous. I mean, you can go to a different cloud service, right? You can change your mind. It's very difficult to change your, the server when it's local. Sometimes I describe Microsoft, Google, and Apple as the three great religions of ICT, because they're everywhere, right? These slides will be available. If you want to email me, I will send them to you. And they'll be available through CESI as well, the whole lot. And so, yeah, they're out there. Lots of people will tell you about these things, but they're very important. When I thought about the decisions, or when schools think about decisions they need to make, the image that comes to mind to me is a kind of a rocky road. There's a couple of potholes here along the way, right? So it's not a straight road. It's not kind of a linear, it's easy from A to B, and there's no bumps or bends or whatever it is along the way. There are lots of bends, lots of potholes, lots of areas to struggle with. And along that, using this kind of framework, a lot of decisions would be, and I've mapped the website to these kind of areas: teacher-student devices, networking Wi-Fi, presenting in the classroom, cloud-based applications, learning platforms, which I didn't mention, but they're more a cloud-based application, and technical support. And I'll talk about tech support a little bit. ICT procurement frameworks, do we use them? Whatever, combinations of different technologies, new builds or old builds. Okay, a couple of examples. Anybody recognize this over here in relation to your school? You don't have to put up your hand, it's okay. So these are real photographs from real schools. And this is the school I was in recently. It is a new build school. I took these photographs, so they're copyright okay. And one of the things up here you'll notice is these are labeled, right? So the patch panel is labeled. There's different colours cables in here. The orange ones are actually the Wi-Fi network. The black ones are the fixed network, and the blue ones are the fibre network between different sections of the building. The cost of technical support, it'll take me days to figure out this mess, right? So if you've got your poor IT guy comes in and you find him in this mode, then it's generally not good, right? Because first of all, he may figure out, he or she, it looks like a he, might figure out the problem, but as they're figuring out the problem, the cost per hour of them figuring out that problem is going to take some time. And this is a very inefficient kind of way of doing it, and it hits the old bottom line, right? So, okay, another example, this is not as colourful, improving the Wi-Fi network. So you may have, if you've got a Wi-Fi network, you may have reliability problems. So it works fine sometimes, and then it doesn't work fine other times. You may have connection drops, you may have to reboot, you may have to reconfigure. So obviously the objective is to resolve it. And as I said, I've been speaking to some school recently, and they have a Wi-Fi network. It's been fine for a couple of hundred devices, 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, 100 devices, but it seems to be struggling now, right? They've got I think they've got 4 years, let's say, or transition years are using devices, and they're considering they want to take the devices into leading, into 5th year and 6th year. So the question for them is: will their existing Wi-Fi actually carry them all the way, or will they actually? The worst case scenario is they actually have to get a new Wi-Fi system, because it's just not, the product that they got is just not up to scratch, right? And that's a very difficult decision. So at the moment, we're in the mode of kind of saying, well, fix the problem on the existing Wi-Fi if you can. Try everything to fix that problem, because the alternative is pretty expensive. And then if you have to go the alternative, it's the wireless framework. So that's just like issue the RFT, evaluate the responses, decide on the implementation mode, phased or whatever, and then implement it. Moving from server to cloud, if you have a server, and I've come across lots of schools and they call me and say, I think we need our IT provider is telling us we need a new server. And that's not surprising, because that's what IT providers do, right? And you know that they like nothing better. But I'll talk a little bit about IT providers. But that is the nature of the beast. A new server is the best solution from their perspective. So you may need more storage. You may need to upgrade. You may be slowing down, and there's tech support issues involved. The objective is to reduce costs, reduce tech support, or whatever. And obviously, you need to identify where you're struggling. Is it data storage? And if, for example, it is data storage, well, there are options in the cloud, right? You could go Dropbox, Google Apps, Office 365, or whatever. Run a trial, see if it works, and then implement. The fourth one, maybe more so post-primary, maybe not. A lack of student access to devices. So that computer room, you can never get the time, you can never schedule the time to go in there. And obviously the objective is to have student access to devices so they can do research or whatever it is. So look at this is a planned process. So obviously you have to talk to your teachers first. You have to implement something with your teachers in year 1, and maybe go with your students in year 2. Consult with the stakeholders. There's a lot of work involved in this for a whole school, not just the principal or the ICT coordinating, but for the whole team to actually get together, and the parents and the board of management. That's a big step. Okay, just some practicalities. We have existing procurement frameworks. So we've got one for PCs, notebooks, laptops. That's all in the one. We've one for digital projectors. We've one for Wi-Fi. We've one for Apple equipment. We have one for Chromebooks and Android devices, and we have one for post-primary for DCG and CAD. If you've got other procurement requirements, I'm doing a new one for projectors, interactive flat screens, visualizers, and digital signage. And I'll have that hopefully ready in about June. And then some schools call me, often new schools, and they're saying, look, we actually want to upgrade our whole network. How do we go to tender for that? Who do we go to? Send me an email, we'll figure something out, right? So for the network, for voice over IP, I'm thinking of changing over my phone system or combinations of the technology. And then another question that comes up a lot is, do we have to use the frameworks, right? Is it mandatory? No, they're not. They're useful tools. So if you can find better value out there, and that can be achieved from other suppliers, schools should seek what I call apples for apples. Apples for apples quotes from both framework and other suppliers, but not compromise on quality, right? So a school called me the other day and they said, look, we've got a great deal from PC World, and it's €100 cheaper than your bloody frameworks and whatever. Why would we use them? And I said, just send me on what you got if you want, and we can talk about it. They were getting Windows Home. They were getting, instead of Windows Professional, they were getting no warranty. Well, they were getting a 1 year, I think, return, so you have to bring the thing back. It wasn't apples for apples. In fact, it was very poor quality. And I called a person who was on CESI. I won't mention their name, but they were very helpful. And I said, if you got this PC coming in for you to be repaired, what could you do? He said, I wouldn't touch it. I couldn't touch it. He said, I can't open the bloody thing. It's pretty well glued together. So anyway, that's okay. Why use ICT procurement frameworks? I try to present them in a non-technical language, practical and useful. You can specify any device. I know a lot of people stay with the templates, and hopefully that means the templates are kind of representative of what people want. The template kind of says, I'll show you in a minute. So we give you some templates, the standard terms and conditions, and there's good warranty built in. This is what it looks like, the PC procurement framework. There's 6 providers on it. Dell, DataPack, Fujitsu, Dell, HP, PC Peripherals, PFH. The notebook one is kind of similar, and different specs in there. This is a template that is part of those little documents, those guideline documents. So, dear supplier, please quote for X notebooks of the spec below as per the OGP framework, because they're based on the OGP framework. The operating system is Windows 10. If you're going, this is a Windows device, so a Windows 10 professional 64-bit, a high-quality mid-range multi-core processor. The reason that terminology is there is you can't really, oh my gosh, is you can't specify Intel. Anyway, the spec is there. Tech support. Satisfaction with tech support varies from very happy to not so happy. Okay. There's no consensus on the best model of tech support. However, it might be a company, it might be an individual. Each school is different. Because you might have a person in your school who actually does a lot of tech support anyway. It might be you. And that's great. Maybe it's not so great for you, but that's the reality, right? So if you're doing that, then you may not want to get something external. But so every school is different, and other factors apply. You need to have a suitable provider, right? They need to be technically competent and have good process. But they also need to be responsible, flexible, and tell you what's going on, right? So they need to have clear communication, open and transparent. A lot of schools tell me, I think he knows what he's doing, but we don't have a clue. You know, they never communicate to us, they never, whatever. And so we've got a bill and we don't know what it's for. Does having high quality ICT help to reduce the cost of technical support? Yes, it does. In lots of different areas. And can students support their own devices? I talked to school the other day, which is doing BYOD, and I said, who supports the devices? Do you take them out and fix them? And no, we don't. That's the students, right? It's up to them, right? 5 ways of reducing costs. Move to the cloud. Having a suitable tech support provider that will give you good value. Move your phone system to IP. Have a managed print solution where you don't pay for a big chunk of hardware or whatever, and maybe move to BYOD. A couple of things on IT providers. They are essential, right? You can't run, I can advise you, or other people can advise you, but you need someone who's going to implement what you need to implement. They're not charities, so they may do something for free every now and again, but it's not going to, they need to be sustainable, right? They need to make a profit to remain sustainable. Like, if somebody's giving you something for cheap the whole time, well, what if they can't, whether you call them up next week and they're not there because their business model is wrong, they need to be sustainable. IT providers don't get pedagogy, right? So you could write a big document explaining to them how teaching and learning and assessment and all this kind of thing, and kind of goes over their heads, right? That's because their strengths are in other areas, right? So don't talk about learning outcomes, tell them what your priorities are, and let them do what they need to do. And it is unreasonable to expect them to be objective. So if I'm an IT provider and I always provide Microsoft solutions, guess what? I'm going to provide you with a Microsoft solution. Or if I'm an Apple solution or a Google solution. So there's very few of them out there who do everything, right? They all have their focus. And you're the customer, so you should demand good service. The guidance on our website reflects the areas we talked about, right? So student devices, networking, cloud-based, etc. This is our website again. The technology section, the planning section, the good practice section. There's some great good practice videos up there for primary and for post-primary. Really, really good stuff in schools. There's lots of online courses. There's some links. And in summary, we've covered all these areas. Thank you. Anybody? Any questions? Yes.
The voice over phones, are they being included in the grant?
Yes.
So you can procure that, or do you go through the procurement process, is it? To have
Send me an email and I'll give you a template.
Can you put your email up?
Sorry?
Do you have your email?
Sorry. Yeah, that's my email address. I'm ICTadvice@pdst.ie. I'm also Tom Lonergan at PDST. So, whatever. Yeah. Yes, you can. And the reason, and it's not specifically mentioned in the circular, but it's information and communications technology, right? Voice over IP is actually going over the data network, and it is communication. So, and it's a cloud-based service as well.
Can I ask you one other question?
Yes.
If you had 4 lines or 5 lines coming in the new voice over thing, how would that affect everything else that you have in terms of your devices? Like if everybody is
phones actually, like when you're having a phone call over a voice over IP, it actually takes very little bandwidth, right? Okay. Yeah. Now, what I would say is if you're putting in voice over IP, you need to, I would say, have a backup line, right? So just in case the broadband goes down, you lose your voice as well as your data. So have at least another backup line, and that's in my template actually that I've sent. Yeah.
Can I cut across just for 1 second because lunchtime has started. So if anybody wants to go, you can go to lunchtime now. It's out down the stairs towards the canteen. But I think Thomas said you were kind of hang on and answer a few questions if you have. Can we just get a big round of applause for what was a really interesting?
Yes, there are. And at a very basic level, some people would say to me, well, isn't my data much safer if I drop it in my server in that room over there, which is not most of the time. And I say, yeah, but what if somebody comes and steals your server, right? So in relative terms, I would say the cloud is much safer, but having said that, there's lots of things you need to do, like along the lines of what Siobhan and Sinead were saying, you can't just put it up anywhere, right? It needs to be on a reputable service. You need to get the terms and conditions that you're happy with and stuff like that. And sometimes I would say, as a general thing, post it in Europe or ideally in Ireland if you can, right? Because there's, let's say the data protection laws in the States may be changing, right? Or maybe they've changed and maybe changing more, right? So, any other questions? Yeah?
Tom, just on the content filtering, do you find that all 6 levels of filtering are being used, or are most schools either on level 3 for students and level 6 for staff?
Most schools are on level 3, 4, 5 or 6.
Right.
The schools that want to block YouTube are on level 3.
Yes.
But any school that goes with 2 levels of filtering generally puts staff on level 6 and puts students on, for post-primary, level 4, and maybe other. Now, an awful lot of primary schools are using level 4. So
okay.
Probably the 2 most common levels are 3 most common, are 4, 5, and 6. Not a lot of schools are allowing YouTube now, which is at least good.
Okay.
Well, I think it's good. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. But you do need to involve your IT person when you're doing that, and they need to understand what you're trying to do. At a basic network level, you do it on fixed IP addresses, right?
Yes.
So effectively, this set of fixed IP addresses is one filtering level, and we map them there, but you've also got to map them locally in the school, otherwise you get a cross array. Yeah? Yeah?
If you have technical support, can the branch pay for any of that?
No. Yeah. And kind of the reason for that is we didn't want schools kind of almost, their branch was gone on tech support and there's nothing to show for it, right? We want them to kind of try to find that money someplace else and at least have something to show for the grant, you know?
And what's in new buildings, like new structures that prevents good Wi-Fi? Like
Are you in a new build?
I'm in a new build and there are teachers hanging out the window to make phone calls.
I don't control. I don't. Okay.
It's the actual building that just gets in the way of.
Yeah, that brings a few bells. Yeah. I don't control the mobile networks, right? But
is that mobile networks? Okay.
Well, that is.
That's
that's not our network.
That's not our network.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's a question for Vodafone and O2.
Okay, all right, got it.
Yeah. But yeah, it seems to happen in new builds. I suppose a lot of concrete. But having said that, maybe like when you've got concrete walls, obviously but then I'd say I'm not sure what the mobile coverage is in here. Like with lots of, I'm not sure what the ceiling is like. If you can get out, some signals comes in.
The insulation that's low too.
Sorry?
Yeah, the insulation too. Very well back insulation.
Yeah, actually you're probably right. That foil kind of thing. Yeah, what about it like that? Yeah.
We were talking to newer schools that with extra thickness walls, to make it nice and quiet between classrooms.
Yeah, you're saying that's the same thing. Yeah. I suppose they would try to achieve certain benefits to the exclusion of others, right? Now, of course, IT companies love when you can put in more access points. Yeah, that's true. And too many access points cannot be a good thing because they interfere with each other. There's whole channel interference. Sorry.
We find that students have our broadband upgraded, just get these connected and tested. But straight away we got a reply saying our line wasn't ready or wasn't suitable. What's the next option for us?
We're very much dependent on the rollout of broadband throughout the country by the providers, right? So if eFibre, for example, which would be Aircom's, network, if that is in your area, and if it's alongside your school, and if your neighbours around the school can get it, we can give you eFibre, right? If your neighbours around the school, and sometimes it's actually this neighbour can get it, we're the school, and that neighbour can't, then you're in the middle, so you might not, because it's the line coming up the road and whatnot. So if you can get it from one of the providers, if we can't give you eFibre or something similar, or if you're lucky enough to be in a cable area, like with Virgin Media, we'll give you a Virgin Media connection, right, which is typically about 150 megs, right? But otherwise, we give you a wireless connection. I know some schools still think they're on satellite connections, but you're not. That dish up on the or yeah, whatever that device over in your school. Oh, actually, the satellite dishes are still there. They actually haven't been taken down yet, but they're all disconnected, right? I'm trying to persuade the department to actually take them down because they're an eyesore. Yeah. But contact the service desk because things change, right? You go to air.ie, which was aircom.ie. You go in under broadband, you put in your telephone number of your school, and it should tell you whether you can get e-fiber from Aircom or not. If they can give it to you, we can give it to you.
Fiber rollout.ie, we put that there too.
Yeah, fiber rollout.ie. Yeah, but the Aircom website, it's actually updated almost every day, right? So, if it's coming to your area, you know, there's a good chance that your school will get, right?
So the lead times are about 2 years after that.
But having said that, do contact the service desk. It's not just Aircom here. We have 20 different providers of Wi-Fi around the country. So we've got Westnet in Sligo, we've got Permanet in Kerry and Wexford, we've got Ripplecom in the Midlands, you know, companies that wouldn't be very well known, right? And then we've got some of the other ones as well. And then we've got our primary and post-primary programs.
Well, I just want to make sure these guys get their lunch, but otherwise I would continue on the conversation is essentially it.
Yeah, no worries. Any more questions? And then I'm happy to... Okay. All right, we'll call it there. Thank you very much. You have to do all this extra time. 40.